year.
Next year, like, oh, wow.
Dennis, I'm very glad you're running the meeting tonight.
Hopefully by then, interest rate.
Good evening, everyone.
Some certainty.
We're going to begin here in a minute. I just want to point out that I know many of you are here for the Solaronics thing, but there are several items on the agenda ahead of you. And we're going to handle them first. And I'll explain the order of the meeting later. But if you want to wait out in the hall, want to wait outside, I suspect it'll be a half hour to an hour before we'll get to the item you're here with. So just be patient. Everybody will get their time up here and get to have their say. But in the interim, please give these other folks who have been working with us even longer the respect of quiet and pay attention, and I think you'll find it quite interesting. A couple of the projects that are coming before you, one in particular, I think you will all find quite interesting, and so we'll take it from there. Let's begin by calling the roll. Patrick, are you going to do that, or is...
Yes, sir, I can take care of that, Mr. Chairman. Chairman McGee?
Here.
Vice Chairman Hauser?
Here.
Secretary and Councilman Sage?
Here.
Mayor Bixson?
Here.
Commissioner Gasson?
Here.
Commissioner King?
Here.
Commissioner Lord?
Here.
Commissioner Kenjuk?
Here. Thank you very much, Patrick. We have a quorum, so the meeting can begin. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, it sure sounds better with a big crowd, doesn't it?
We're glad you've all taken the time to make it tonight. The first order of business is number 3, and that's public comment for items not on the agenda here tonight. Other things, we'll get to them in due course. But is there anyone here? And Rose, I'd ask you, is anyone waiting electronically to speak to the commission on anything that's not on the agenda? We'll keep the others on hold for now.
I see no one with their hand raised.
Okay, and anyone in the room have anything to speak about other than items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you very much. Next item is approval of the minutes from the meeting of October 3rd. Commissioners, have you had a chance to review these? And if so, does anyone have any input or motion?
So moved.
The mayor's moved the approval of the minutes of October 3rd. Is there support?
Support.
And who is the supporter? Rich is the supporter. Thank you. Any other discussion? Patrick, the roll call.
Okay, Mayor Bixson?
Yes.
Commissioner Kenjuk?
Yes.
Chairman McGee?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hauser?
Yes.
Secretary Sage?
Yes.
Commissioner Gasson?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Lord?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, this is public hearings, and for those of you who don't regularly join us, our order of business is to first handle these items that are called public hearings. These have actually been before the commission before, similar to number 6, considerations, and they've been discussed here openly. They've been discussed with the staff extensively, and actually these 2 hearings have been publicized as required by the law, that there's a public hearing on them tonight, so we take them first. And the first one on the list, 5A, is the Roxy, 401 Walnut, consideration of a request for site plan approval and for an entertainment and special event venue and special exception approval for a request for payment in lieu of providing parking, respectively. Vidya, are you with us?
Yes.
This is
Good evening, Ms.
This is Vidya Krishnan. She's our professional planner. She's actually with McKenna and Associates, so she's a retained consultant. Vidya's job is basically to keep us in line with not only the state law, but the city ordinances and the master land use plan to make sure that we're on the straight and narrow. And she knows all the little tiny bits about that keeps us from getting into trouble. So Vidya, excuse me, but the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. The request before the city tonight is from Glenn Wilhelm to operate an entertainment, cocktail and special event venue within an existing 6,715 square foot building. I will pull up the site plan on the screen for benefit of the commission and the members of the audience. The subject site is the location of the former Village Shoe Inn, which is located on the north side of West 4th Street, just east of Pine Street. The site is zoned CBD, which is the Central Business District. Per the applicant's narrative, the primary use of the site is an entertainment venue with ticket sales being predominant. Any food that is served in there will only be catered or brought in. There is no kitchen for cooking facilities at this venue. So the proposed use is classified as a theater, and that is a principal permitted use in the Central Business District under our zoning ordinance. Now, the applicant appeared before you for a preliminary hearing on October 3rd, and they were scheduled for a public hearing tonight. With regard to access and circulation, there is an existing access drive of West 4th Street and a shared access drive on the northwest corner of this site onto Pine Street. Now, the applicant is reconfiguring this so that this is a one-way access into the site of West 4th Street, and there will be only an exit lane onto Pine Street. Now, this is a shared access drive, and the applicant has submitted copy of an irrevocable shared access agreement, and the applicant is the owner of both parcels. The property owner is a common property owner, so the shared access agreement is jointly recorded. Appropriate no entry signs have been installed, as we had previously recommended, to ensure that the circulation pattern works. There are existing sidewalks along the site's Walnut frontage, along the frontage on West 4th Street. A new 5-foot wide public sidewalk along with barrier-free access ramps will be constructed along the west frontage of the site. In addition to that, there will be a sidewalk along the front of the building, providing access to the main entrance to the theater, and this is barrier-free accessible too. With regard to parking, based upon the ordinance standards for a theater, a total of 88 parking spaces are required for the use. The site has a total of 17 parking spaces, resulting in a shortage of 71 parking spaces. The applicant has applied for special exception to pay in lieu of the parking shortage, which is a provision allowable under the city's code of ordinances. The proximity of the site to the city's west parking garage on Walnut makes it convenient for parking for visitors to the theater. At this time, the applicant is not proposing any valet parking, but the applicant is aware that in the future, if ever valet parking should be offered on this site, there are specific set of standards in the zoning ordinance which they must comply with. The plan proposes a new dumpster enclosure here. The gates have not been shown on this, although on the detail sheet, the gates are shown, so the enclosure will be constructed with gates. With regard to facade changes, the proposed building is going to be given a modern appearance like some of the newer buildings in downtown Rochester. The color palette is predominantly gray and black, and the applicant has submitted these colored renderings and the elevations. Basically, the architecture of the building is remaining unchanged. It's only color facade modifications and light fixtures. One of the applicant's plan sheet states that there are no changes to the exterior or outside lighting proposed, but they did submit a photometric plan that shows several wall-mounted fixtures and also some new bell light fixtures along the site's West 4th frontage. So the discrepancy needs to be corrected. All of the fixtures are of a style that meets the City of Rochester's zoning ordinance. The biggest point of discussion on this project was sound. The proposed hours of operation of this facility are till 2 a.m. With the site being in close proximity to single-family residential further west on Pine Street, the property immediately to the west is not zoned residential or used residential, but there are other properties on the northwest side and further on Pine that are single-family residential sites. We had expressed concern about patrons leaving a late show and cars starting up and exiting onto Pine Street late at night, creating a nuisance concern. The applicant has stated that no activity will take place outside the building. Any live entertainment will stop at midnight, and customers exiting the site will be done so in a staggered fashion. The applicant has also submitted an undated letter from a full-service installation company called Stony Creek Services. And that letter basically notes that they did sound evaluation of the interior of this building, and the acoustics actually work without causing noise pollution on the outside. Once the interior improvements are done, the sound company will go out there again to check on the sound coefficient. They plan to use a product called cellulose spray, which is supposed to be a noise absorbing material in order to contain the noise within the building itself. The letter also states that the noise levels will be tested upon completion of installation and will comply with the city's noise ordinance. The next item was landscaping. The applicant is proposing some additional landscaping along the site's Pine Street frontage. If you can see over here, there are trees and shrubs, or the smaller circles, to be installed along Walnut frontage, and several trees and shrubs also along Pine Street frontage. This plantation is located within Pine Street right-of-way, so the applicant will require city council approval to allow for those trees to be planted. The applicant has used species that are salt-resistant and that are safe to be planted next to sidewalks. A concept plan for a proposed sign has been submitted at this time, and it is a marquee sign. Detail on the actual sign area will be submitted for administrative approval at a later date, like it's typically done. The applicant's proposed use is a very adaptive reuse of an existing building. It is a slightly intensive use. However, a theater is considered as a principal permitted use within the central business district. The applicant has been working with city administration for a while to address all of the concerns that were raised. So at this time, it would be our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval to the Roxy to be located at 401 Walnut, subject to 3 conditions. City's verification of noise levels generated after installation of insulation is completed. Planning Commission recommendation and City Council approval of payment in lieu of 71 parking spaces. And finally, City Council approval of installation of landscaping within the right-of-way of Pine Street. I would be happy to answer any questions or concerns you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya. Ask the commissioners if you have any questions for the planner. Any questions? Okay, at this point, I'd like to ask the petitioner to come forward, if you would, and identify yourself.
How you doing? Nice to see everyone again. Glenn Wilhelm from the Roxy. I think Vinny did a great job of outlining and summarizing where we're at with the project and the changes that we made from the last meeting to accommodate some of the concerns and questions that were brought up. One of the things I did want to point out is when Vinny was talking about the lighting that we had on the site plan, no changes to exterior lighting, it was always our intent to change the fixtures. So we didn't change the locations of any lights. We just changed the fixtures and sent video the cut sheets for all those lights that are compliant.
Speak into the microphone, if you would.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I should have caught that, sorry about that.
So all the cut sheets from all the new fixtures are compliant with the city ordinances. It was always our intent to change out the fixtures. The fixtures that are on their building now are, probably 30 years old.
Okay. It is coincidental that we have a large group of residents of the city here tonight.
Right.
I think it'd be helpful if you just took a minute to recap what the intent of the project is here and what you're going to do on the site.
Sure. So I've been in the restaurant and entertainment business for a number of years. I've lived in Rochester Hills for about 25 years or so. I've always looked at Rochester as a place that has a need for entertainment. I think there's a lot of great restaurants in town. There's a lot of great stores in town, but entertainment was something I always thought was a little lacking. So I've been keeping my eye on Rochester for a number of years. And when the Village Shoe Inn became available, I started to talk with Chuck, who's operated that business with his mother for a number of years. And the building is very conducive for what we're looking to do. The parking structure being very close is very helpful. The size of the building and the 2-story structure was very conducive what we're looking at doing. So what we're looking at doing are dueling piano shows, comedy shows, some live band entertainment, things where people are gonna come to town at, say, 6 or 6:30, go to dinner, and then come over to the Roxy at 8 o'clock for a show that'll be about a 2.5 hour show. So there'll be 8 to 10:30-ish to do some live entertainment. And we're going to try all kinds of different acts. We'll try blues and jazz and classic rock and country and comedy and all kinds of different things to see what the market's looking for.
The building is interesting. I think it would help if you explained to them, we're kind of big on sustaining and repurposing, et cetera. And
Sure,
I think they probably
sure. So the original building was built in 1850, was it 56? 56. It was originally a church. So the original building of the portion where the stage and the entertainers will be is in the old church portion. There had been a couple of additions on that were added on over the years, and in the 50s and the 70s, I believe, some additions went on to the building that we were going to do our seating at. But the original portion of the building with the church is where we're. So no changes to the original church. It's got a beautiful tin cove ceiling that's not going to get changed, and we're looking forward to doing some great things down there.
Glenn, how many seats?
So Mark, what was the final mark? 280, 284? Or was it 286? 286 was the final number, yeah.
on 2 levels.
2 levels, right.
It appears to be, Vidya, could you put up the interior plan just for the benefit of the audience? There you go. You can see that's the main floor with the stage, and then there's a second level above it. And I call it sort of bistro seating where everything's facing the stage. And
Yep.
it could be pretty interesting. There was a planning, not planning commission, but Downtown Development Authority planning session held at the Royal Park about a year ago now. And there were probably 150 people there, including downtown business owners, a lot of members of the public. And the principal thing at the top of the list was downtown entertainment. And lo and behold, we didn't know that this was going to be coming along, but I have to say that I think the city officials are pretty excited about it. We're cautious. We made mention the last time that our biggest concern is parking and noise and things like that.
Sure.
I'm assuming you continue that discussion with Nick and his staff to make sure that, we do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. In regards to the noise, so we did our initial assessment, as Vidya said, with Stony Creek Services, who I've worked with a number of times, and they're really high-quality sound engineers. So they did their initial assessment on the building, and there was some of the original architecture is very conducive to the acoustics of the building. There's the ceiling in the main room is a coved ceiling, which is very helpful. So what they've done is they came up with an original plan of where they're going to place some of their cellulose sound absorption material. Once we get the farther down the line and the build-out comes in and the carpeting gets in and draperies and things like that, then they come back because the acoustics change quite a bit once you start putting all those materials into the room. Then they come back again prior to opening, do some additional testing, and then that's when we tweak the building with sound absorption panels and different things to kind of tweak the room out. Things
So
like
you'll test with live.
Sure, we'll
acts,
test with
live
live acts, yep. But things like the walls for the bathrooms not being there, it's difficult for them to know exactly how sound's gonna move around before walls go up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Commissioners, any questions for the our gentleman here at the mic? Okay.
I guess
Thank you very much.
just
Oh,
one-
Sarah, excuse me.
One question for Vidya. I just want to make sure I understand what the vote is on tonight. This is an approved use. We're just, we need to do site plan approval, and then there's a special exception strictly for the parking, the pay
Yes.
in lieu of? Okay.
And that then obviously must go to city council for final approval. So the site plan is approved with us tonight, but it must go on for another hearing in front of the city
Mr.
council.
Chairman, there's 2 cases, if you may.
Yes.
So if they wanted to write a check for $71,000, they could be done and not go to city council.
Yeah.
If they want a payment plan over 10 years, then that's when city council can agree to a payment plan.
Thanks for
So they
pointing
could
that out.
make that go away. Yeah.
For the benefit of those who are here, as you know, most buildings in a downtown area are built to the lot lines, all 4 corners. Along Main Street, some of them have a space or 2 in the back. And to keep a downtown viable and active, the city some years ago sold bonds and put up the 2 parking decks. And just so we played it straight and fair for these businesses, if they want added parking, they essentially have to pay a fee for the use of the deck. So that's what we're talking about, and that will probably get approved by the commissioners tonight and then sent on to the city council. It's a pretty good thing. One hand washes the other. We provide the parking in advance. These facilities, if they want to grow and thrive, need parking. And as the city gets busier, you know, they're going to need it more and more. But they pay their share. David?
A question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things about your operation in terms of parking. You're going to be using off-site parking majority of. Are you going to require employees to park off-site so the site parking would be for patrons?
Employees, you know, I've had some discussions with Chris from the former Penny Black, and he buys cards for his employees to use at the parking deck. My gut tells me that's what we're going to do, something along those lines of we're going to provide employee parking at the deck by use of some type of reimbursement or some cards. And in addition, while we're talking about parking, when we had met with the city administration early on, one of the things that was on their wish list was to add a sidewalk along Pine Street, which has never been there. Now, for us to do that, I think we lost 12 parking spots to do that because we lost a whole row. But we agreed to do it because we wanted to keep a barrier between the residential area with some trees, so we needed some space for that. And then we could also donate the sidewalk to the city as well.
I appreciate your answer on providing some sort of reimbursement or card to your employees. Yeah, I'd like maybe some sort of commitment in the process of a motion if it gets to that point here tonight. And the reason being is that sometimes an employee might say, I don't want to pay for parking to go to work. They're going to go to the neighborhood and find a spot. I know that into the neighborhood, it's residential permit parking, but not that far into the neighborhood is park where you want.
Sure.
And I think that would be something we'd want to avoid since there is such limited parking for the building site itself.
Sure.
The other thing, and maybe it's a question to Vidya, barrier-free parking is provided on site, which is great. And I'm wondering, Vidya, is that ratio of barrier-free parking relative to the spaces on the site, or is it relative to the spaces required by the building? And if so, I think we'd want to increase the barrier-free on-site versus just limiting it to, I think it's 2 spaces now.
I believe we did it based on the capacity of the building, but it's the
Okay.
seating capacity of the building.
So I would suggest that it should be based on what the requirement for the site is, not just what you can accommodate on the site, because the ratio is based on how many people might be using that facility in terms of.
Yeah, no, we didn't do it based on the site, the parking site. We did it based on the seating capacity.
Gotcha.
Yeah, can you
just one
verify
step-
that for us?
While she's doing that, just to kind of go one step further on the
Yes.
question.
I'm actually looking at the plans. So barrier-free parking is typically based upon the number of spaces that are actually provided on the site. But since this site has got a requirement of 88 spaces total, the barrier-free requirement is 4 parking spaces, and their site plan provides for only 2 parking spaces. So should the planning commission want them to accommodate 2 additional barrier-free parking spaces on the site to make it 4, which would be what would be required for their full parking needs, they will lose possibly a couple of more spaces, regular parking spaces, which will then get added on to their payment in lieu of.
So, thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Good
for
catch.
indulging me there.
Sure.
So, certainly, this commissioner says it needs to be minimum 4, but really what I'm leading towards is that today, there's many more people needing accessible or close parking beyond those that are in severe need. So 2 or even 4 isn't going to be adequate for the 286, I think your number was.
Right.
I think it would be beneficial to your patrons to have that ease of parking. Even though the parking deck is close, I think you'll find it a much better offering to your patrons if you had more than just the 4 minimum, if you
Sure.
could accommodate that.
Sure.
So I'm hoping I'll hear more about that in the
Promotion.
in the motion. And then one parking spot looking at 4th Street, the one right in the very end, and this is a question of Vidya, it's positioned in such that if you're exiting, you're backing onto the sidewalk, which I kind of think of that as a dangerous situation. But then I also think, is that even allowable to back in a commercial setting onto a sidewalk?
Typically, you cannot use a public right-of-way for maneuvering on site. However, the site is an existing legal non-conforming site. It is already way short of parking. Every space matters, which is why as long as they were not worsening the degree of non-conformity and they were improving it by designating this as a one-way route only, I found it to be acceptable to leave the space as it is. If it were a commercial use, such as a grocery store or something, I would have said the number of cars parking in and out of that space might be too many. But in this case, loss of even one additional space would matter on this site. In relation to your previous question, Commissioner Gasson, if the applicant wanted to provide additional barrier-free parking spaces, the best place would be to make this whole row barrier-free parking so that more customers who have the need to use a wheelchair or for physically handicapped can actually use all of these as barrier-free parking. The applicant will likely lose maybe 1 or 2 parking spaces in addition, so the payment in lieu will go up from 71 to 73.
Thank you, and I appreciate your thoughts on that one spot I was talking about. I'll respectfully disagree that it's a non-conforming use now, but this is, I think, worsening what we would consider non-conforming today. It's a 90-degree parking situation now, or was. This is an angled parking backing onto the sidewalk, where previously you'd back into an interior aisle space. So I'm not sure that that's not worsening the nonconformity. I get it that we're looking at issues in terms of not having enough parking and adding to your nonconforming parking accommodation. But I think if we're looking at 70-something, what's 2 or 3 really in the big scheme of things?
Sure.
Along the same lines in terms of the venue, if I recall right, it's not like a place you go to eat. You go eat somewhere else and you're just doing bar service sort of things.
That's correct. Right.
With that in the dumpster venue, would we need, or does the ordinance require that a dumpster that has that sort of use get water and drainage? Because I didn't see anything accommodating that.
I would have to defer to the building official, but typically I have seen grease traps and removal service required in a dumpster only when it's associated with a restaurant kitchen. This is merely dumping of waste, so I would have to defer that question to the building official to make that call.
Okay. And then my last thing is, for this sort of, what you call it, comedy shows or some small music type things, are those kind of acts usually traveling in a van or a trailer or something where they need to have parking on site or unloading or loading?
Yeah, so if there is traveling bands, usually the setup is done 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. We did, Vinny, if you're able to pull up the site plan again, to the right side, as you came in, it's kind of almost like an unloading zone.
So let me go back over here, okay?
Yeah, so as you.
I'll go to the site plan. Yeah, okay, there you go. Okay.
So as you come in off of 4th Street, there's a door, a loading type door that's down closer to 4th Street, that we would do a loading right at that space right there. And then the cars or the vans would park from there.
And then they would disperse before.
Then they would disperse from there. But all those things happen way prior to you opening.
Yeah, they'd move on before your people started showing up.
Correct, right.
And then one last question, Mr. Chairman, to Vidya.
Yes.
One of your conditions or recommendations in a recommendation condition was verification of sound after things were done. It didn't really state anything if the verification wasn't successful. Is there a stipulation in a motion that you would like to see that if under verification it didn't meet the ordinance, what would need to happen? Is it denial of occupancy or is it?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Typically, unless they meet the noise ordinance, a certificate of occupancy would not be issued. So you could elaborate the condition to say noise verification levels after installation of insulation is completed prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Keep some notes. You're going to have to put the motion together.
And while we're talking about that, if you want to make it part of the motion that we add 2 additional handicap parking spots in that area, I don't have any issues with that at all.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, this item is scheduled for a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing at 7:30. And this is the opportunity for anybody who's either present in the room or Rose waiting that has any comments or suggestions relative to the site plan that we're reviewing right now.
I don't see anyone online with their hand up.
Okay, very good. Yes, sir. Come forward, and if you would, just give us your name and address.
Todd Greenbaum, 147 Griggs. I've lived in this area for 40 years, and Commissioner, you brought up on the last meeting, the Planning Vision Committee, that was number 1. I've been going to these planning commissions since James Returno's era, and that same thing always came up for the past 20 years. This is what we've always wanted. So it's a long time coming. I appreciate you guys supporting this. You know, we got plenty of bars for cover bands now but this is unique. I like the idea of a theater in this town.
Thank you. I'm really glad that the audience I'm looking out at tonight is here to hear about this. It's pretty exciting for the city of Rochester. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Any other comments? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Kathy Fitsenko. I'm representing the business. My business partners and I own the building at 425 Walnut, so we are 3 buildings north of the Roxy, and we have a concern about the parking. We currently have a parking lot on the west of our building. We own that lot. We maintain the lot along with Salon 429. We own all those spots. We already have a problem with the School of Rock using our parking lot so that our tenants don't have anywhere to park. Their clients do not have any place to park. We are policing it. Was not so much of a problem during pandemic, but as everything has opened up again, the Painted Pot and the School of Rock, we are having a lot of problems with people using our lots. So we have a concern about the parking situation with a facility this large coming in just south of us.
And yours is signed, I'm assuming?
We do not have a sign on our building. It looks like a little blue house with a red door on it. It used to be.
Parking sign, so no parking other than,
We do,
yeah, and they ignore it. Okay.
yes. And we
Mr.
catch
Wilhelm.
people at times and ask them as they're getting out and walking to one of the other places, and we say, please don't park here, this is parked. But we can't patrol it constantly.
No.
And if cars are left there overnight, and we would need to plow the lot, say in the wintertime, it would prohibit us from being able to plow around cars that might be left overnight.
All good
So
points.
we have concerns.
Glenn, you have?
Yeah. So a couple of things that we had talked about early on was when we met with the city administration, one of the things we're considering is when someone, all our ticket sales are done online. So one of the things that we're considering is including in your ticket price the fee to park in the parking structure. So when they paid their $25 ticket price, would add $3 or $4, whatever the number is, on for your parking. So it would be a prepaid ticketing to go into the parking structure, which is right across the street and actually closer than, it's close. Right, it's close, it's actually closer than,
And unfortunately, our clients frequently have to use that.
right. So it would be closer than actually, what they already paid for would be actually closer than going down the street. So that's one way that we've, are thinking about addressing it. The other thing to keep in mind is, we're not something that's open during the day. It's gonna be 8 o'clock shows, which people start rolling in at 7:15, 7:30. This is not a, during the day prime business time that we're gonna be operating. Not to say that, people don't come early or something, but.
We do have clients that come in the evening, people that work during the day. It's primarily financial planners that rent space in our building. And so a lot of our meetings do take place in the evening. I was just over there a little while ago, and there are 3 offices that currently have clients in there on meeting at the moment.
Gotcha. So your building is 3 buildings south or north?
We are right between the Painted Pot and Salon 429. Our
So
address
3
is
houses north of the
425.
Rock School?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, so this is not a unique situation, and actually, I'm going to turn this around. We appreciate when the businesses put up signs that say, we're going to tow you if you do it, because what's happening is a lot of the businesses by your building, just, it's a free-for-all, and at night, people are cheap, so they go in and they park in those lots for free. It happened at the Village Shoe Inn. We lost at least $200 every night because he wouldn't put chains across the driveway. So it's incumbent on the owners of the property to police it. It's a simple phone call to buyers once it's posted, and then you have to do that or you'll never win. And it's not on Glenn to have to do that. Right now, we don't like that people don't block their lots off at night because people avoid paying the parking. So while you're open or not, we would like them shut off with a chain, simple chain across the driveway, or make it so people can't get in.
Well, and in
So-
your spiel online when you're selling tickets, I would ask that you put a line or two in there about adjacent businesses, that
Sure.
no Roxy parking, you
Right.
will be towed, something to that effect, so that the direct patrons know,
Right.
don't go over there.
And I would even take that a step further because I want to be a good neighbor. I plan on putting something in there in the email response when you get your ticket is no parking on the residential streets, because the last thing I want is residents getting upset with
Yeah.
me and coming here, expressing that. So I don't have any problem with communicating that at all.
Okay. Any other,
We've got someone in Zoom.
Chairman McGee,
yes,
there is a Mr. Gary who's on Zoom who would like to speak. Go ahead, Mr. Gary.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we would like to be good neighbors too, and Kathy, who just spoke, is one of the owners of the building, and I also co-own it and manage the property on 425 Walnut. I'm Gary Gilligan.
Good evening.
I just
Glad
looking
you
at the
could make
number. I'm looking at the numbers. There's 286 people who can attend, and on average, I would say most of them will be 2 people in a car. If you divide that, that's 143. You've got, that equals, and you've got 71 parking places across the road. And you only have 21 parking spots on site. 2 are handicapped, so there's 23. They're going to find places to park. We already, like it was stated, we get a lot of wear and tear in our parking lot. It's a busy, we have 3 businesses sharing that private parking. It's busy. And we have a sign out, it says you'll be towed away. Maybe we need more signs out to say if you're parking here and you're unauthorized, you will be towed. And I hate to have that, as a good neighbor, I hate to have your customers getting upset, but that's how it's going to be if that occurs, unfortunately. And I would hope that the police would honor that, or people would honor that, to help us make sure that that's going to be,
who's parking in your lot now?
honored and
I mean,
taken.
the Roxy's not open.
taken-
Who's parking in there now?
The people who are going to the Painted Pot and the people that are going to School of Rock.
You might try to deal with those 2 businesses, but
Like I said,
In this case, they're
when
gonna
we see them,
pre-sell
when we
parking,
see them
so-
get out of their car and obviously walk to restaurants
Yeah.
or walk, and they're not coming into our 3 businesses, if we see it, we do say something.
And you
But-
should take it further, what the manager is suggesting is, if you do this in advance and set up a relationship with buyers towing, they happen to use, they'll tow the car.
Yep.
So, and
No, thank you.
it's the ultimate enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Appreciate that. Anyone else want to speak? Yes, sir.
I own the salon next to her.
Could you have-
Salon 429, Ken Robinette.
Hi, Ken, how are you?
Pleased to meet you. The only other issue we have is they're talking about putting a sidewalk along the parking lot. We're going to lose 10 more spaces on top of that. Is that something that, because there is sidewalk on the other side of the street, are they going to, because he was talking about putting a sidewalk
We're not doing that, are we?
along there.
I think it ends at their
The
property.
sidewalk, yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the sidewalk ends at their property. To be honest with you, I was charged 5 years ago with going to all you guys, everybody up there, and say, we're going to take our land back, get your spaces off of our land so we can have a sidewalk and make it safe all the way up. So we have not done that yet. This is the first step. Voluntarily, hopefully someday, we're going to get a sidewalk all the way up to University. That's the correct way
So
to
those
do it,
spaces are partly in the right of way?
but They are, on their property.
They are in the right of way.
Yeah. So something to consider.
But we're not forcing that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Okay, Susan Schenken, I'm a resident of Rochester Hills.
Hi, Susan.
One of my concerns with the city of Rochester is that you don't really have a proactive light ordinance. And when I went through and looked at the specs for the lighting for this plan and for the St. John Lutheran School, the specs for the lighting are about 4,000 Kelvin. It's a cool blue light. And the new Tide facility that has gone in, that's a really bright parking lot. So my suggestion to this development and all future developments would be to have the Kelvin temperature of the lighting reduced down to about 3,000 or 27, even better, 2,700. So it's a warmer light, so that would not travel as far and be softer on our eyes. Especially when we're traveling down University, it is kind of blinding when you travel past the Tide facility and some of the other lights that are throughout Rochester.
Thank you for pointing that out. Biddy, I'm assuming what we're proposing to approve meets the ordinance.
At this time, yes, for this project, it does meet. Our ordinance right now says that based on the photometric plan, the illumination intensity at the property lines needs to drop to 0, and all fixtures need to be downward directed and shielded with a concealed light source. So as of this time, the proposed fixtures all meet the ordinance requirements. But I will speak to Attorney Kratt and Nick, and we will look into the lumens or the
Foot
heat
candles.
emitted from the light source itself. That's something to take a look at.
Actually, it's more of the color temperature of it. With the LED lights, things have changed in lighting so dramatically. And when you go to a 4,000, 5,000 Kelvin temperature, you're into a white-blue light. That is really, it really is harmful to the environment. When you go down to a 3,000 Kelvin level, it is much softer and much more environmentally friendly. So I would really suggest that for for all these projects going forward.
Would you make sure that Nick has your name and address so we can get a hold of you?
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming. Anyone else waiting over here? Okay,
Yes.
one more.
Mr.
Yes,
Gary
sir.
on Zoom.
Oh, hi again. If I might add, again, trying to be good neighbors here, you've got, if at capacity, 286 people attending, you've got 143 cars. You've got 71 across the street, you got 23 with two handicap. Where are they going to park? And that's my concern. And we have those three buildings. I could put a chain across, but I got three businesses, the Painted Pot, our building in the middle, the blue one, and then 4229 Salon. Where are they going to park? I can see them coming into we can't put chains across with so many businesses that own those parking lots. I don't know how you do that. I think there's got to be some more formal mechanism from, and I love it that the Roxy is doing this. I'm not against it. There's got to be some better way to make sure that people know where they're going to park. And it can't be in our parking lot.
Could you re-explain how you plan to sell tickets?
Yeah, so what we plan on doing is when someone goes online to buy a ticket, there's going to be a parking fee included in your ticket that gets you into the parking structure. So the closest parking to us is not your three buildings. The closest parking is directly across the street into the parking structure. So and because it's a prepaid, that's where I see everybody going. I definitely don't want to cause any increased issues with your parking lot, and I don't think we will. I think by us pushing them right into the parking structure directly across the street is with a prepaid ticketing, I think that's what's going to happen.
I've heard the gentleman say there's 71 spaces that he's referring to. I'm looking, there's 297 spaces in the parking structure right across the street. So I'm a little bit confused as to what's the accurate number. I believe it's the 297, but this gentleman is saying it's 71. So I just want to understand better where he's coming up with that number.
I think that's the parking in lieu of number.
Parking in lieu of.
When I read over what you're proposing, it showed that you were buying 71 prepaid. You're paying $71,000, $1,000 per lot or per part. So that's 71 that you're prepaying. And you got 23 there, so that's 100, that's like 104 spots, and an average, you're gonna need 143 if it's capacity generally. So where are those other 40 people gonna park? And and maybe it isn't the parking ramp, I don't know, but it should be specific. Like when we go down to any of these venues around if you buy a parking, you know where you're gonna park. There's no guessing, oh, we're gonna park, we gotta find parking. You gotta take that equation out of those tickets. That's my thought. Just so that they don't use our parking.
Mr. Chairman, again, it's the parking required by ordinance.
It's the ordinance.
It's not guessing at two people in a car.
Right.
It's 88. So he's following the rules. So you can have 4 people come in a car and you won't even need that many. So, but it's an ordinance number. And
It meets the
again, we
ordinance
talked about
standard.
people will go closer to park where they eat. We're hoping that they're going on the
And
east
they
side.
may walk from where
and
they
walk
park for eating.
2 blocks
Yeah.
to get to the venue, yeah. So.
I think that's a very, very valid point. I think people are going to, in our experience, we found that 85 to 90% of the people come into our events go to eat prior to them. And I think Nick's 100% right. People are going to park near Cruz and Muir or near O'Connor's or something, and then just walk no one wants to get back in the car and walk and drive a block over. I think that's really what's going to happen. I think it's going to be much more spread out, and I think that is also going to help as people are leaving, that they're not leaving from one area, they're kind of spreading out as they go as well.
I think we just need to clarify what the parking in lieu of means. It doesn't mean that his business owns 71 spots in the garage. It means that per the ordinance, they were 71 spots short. They have to pay for that towards the parking in the garage. People going to park at the business still have to pay to use the parking in the garages.
Correct.
Right? So it's not that, for the gentleman on Zoom, it's not that they own 71 spots in the parking garages. That's the contribution they had to make to the city to meet the ordinance
For
for
providing
parking.
the deck.
Yeah, but people will still
Okay.
need to pay. And so he's saying that their ticket prices may include parking at those garages as well.
And again, it might not, you can go anywhere you want in the system. It doesn't mean you go on the deck. He might have it set up that if you go on the deck, you get a credit for $4 or whatever, how many hours you're there into the machine. And that's the software we have to work out with him, which we have been talking about. But otherwise, you go wherever you want, any place, and pay to park and walk to the venue. So we have this a lot. Royal Park doesn't have enough parking. So people find a place to park, pay by the hour, and then walk there. It happens all the time.
And they park in the east deck, I
Correct.
assume. Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming.
Okay.
Anyone else waiting to speak? Yes, sir.
Alan Harris, resident 421 Pine Street, also speaking on behalf of my father, Lawrence Harris, who is the owner of 421 Pine Street. A couple of key phrases. One, the city motto is where you live. So I live right kitty corner to where the Roxy would be. I live next door to Paint Creek Arts Center. What we have found is the unintended consequences of, say, the building being demolished that was on that lot. We were assured no one would park on the grass there. I've sent the zoning coordinator pictures. That has now become all parking on the lawn. This summer, Paint Creek Arts Center, without consulting neighbors, put a piano in that lot. All hours of the night, people coming from the bar, playing the piano. Not a place where I like to live, given that condition. Many years. Now that Penny Black has outdoor seating, loud music, having to make many, many calls to the police when it's after hours. So I just would encourage everyone to consider unintended consequences of what it's going to be like for residents as well as businesses that's impacting our quality of life. And again, just given the parking that is happening in that lot, again, we were given every assurance that that would not become a parking lot right next door. People will park where it is free.
Who owns that lot?
Paint Creek. People will park where it is free. So I can tell you where people are going to park. They're going to move into the neighborhood. They will walk where it is free because they have the opportunity now to park in the deck. They're not parking in the deck. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you coming. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, the time is now 7:50, and I'm going to declare the public hearing closed and having been held, and return the matter up here to the commissioners again. Anyone have any further comments or et cetera?
If I may, for just a minute, I think for the public here, this is obviously a very large crowd, and don't let the silence of the commission think that we're not interested or invested, just the opposite. This is maybe the fourth or fifth time that the applicant has been before us, so we're very well versed in understanding what the process is and what the development is including. Based on everything I've heard and based on the concerns and the issues that were presented both by the adjacent business owner as well as the parking, or as the resident, I do think that certainly there's concerns, but at the same time, I think the benefit outweighs any burden to the local community. So I would be in favor of this development. But that being said, I do think that this should be an opportunity for the city to maybe pay a little bit special attention to the sound, to the noise, to the parking, and it's going to be a work in progress, and I don't think it's going to be perfect the first day it opens, and so I think the owner, who has certainly demonstrated a commitment to the city as well as administration, will probably work cooperatively with adjacent business owners as well as the residents to make sure that you are a good business, you are a good neighbor, because with your success is everyone else's success. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think it's a great reuse of a building that's frankly vacant right now. And I wish you nothing but success in your endeavor, okay?
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Anyone else? David, are you so inclined?
I'm really excited about what is proposed. I particularly like the landscape that you're proposing to kind of soften your exposure to the west. So with my comments that I made earlier, I'd be willing to make a motion, Mr.
Please
Chairman.
do.
That we would move this forward with an approval, with
Site plan approval.
site plan, with a couple things we talked about, that you would work out something with your employees in terms of parking to persuade them not to be parking free in the neighborhood, whether that's reimbursement or cards. That you'll expand your barrier-free parking from 2 to 4, what it is now. 5 would be better. That you would look at, that you would eliminate that parking spot that backs onto the sidewalk, and maybe that's an opportunity to expand that landscaping that you're proposing.
And then the noise.
And then the
verifying.
sound verification, that you will work through whatever necessary to meet the ordinance, even if the initial verification isn't satisfactory, you will keep doing. And you kind of mentioned it's a go as you add on to it after you understand what the potential changes are. So I expect that
Prior to
process.
certificate of occupancy, you want to add that in?
Yeah, prior
that
to,
language,
prior to certificate of occupancy, and then the dumpster issue be satisfied if there is an issue through the building permit process. Maybe that could be excluded from the motion, but I do expect that to be taken care of somewhere, needs to be checked off.
Rose, Patrick, you got that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there support for the motion? Oh, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
well, Mr. Gasson supported it.
Mr. Gasson proposed it, so I need a second.
I thought Mr.
Support.
Second. Supported and second.
Could I ask one more question before we move
No.
into the, please, just one.
Please.
The Calvin mentioned in terms of lighting, was that by intention that it's a 4,000 Calvin light, or just, it is what it is, and you're not opposed to a softer, less intense light that'll still do the same thing, like a 2,700 or 3,000, which I think would be more welcoming and warm and fit a little bit better in the character which your rendering shows?
That was just us, going by the ordinance as written. That was just us accommodating the ordinance.
Well, the foot candle can still be 0 at the lot line with a 27 Kelvin light type, but I just didn't know if you said, no, I got it at 4,000.
Nope.
Just as long as the architect concurs that it doesn't interfere with safety or security.
Sure.
Can I add that to the motion?
I don't care, as long as safety and security is,
Yeah, without, no sacrifice to that.
yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Do you support the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think this is an exciting project. I've also been convinced that it is reasonable. We've taken steps to make sure this isn't some pine knob type of situation. So I think it's going to be a good program. I guess I would ask, I don't know if it needs to be in the motion, or ask the city administration that maybe 6 months after they open, they bring us a report, just kind of a check up on how it's going and things like that.
Could we ask that you meet with the manager specifically to prepare
Sure,
that report?
Absolutely.
We did it with the Penny Black, actually. We did that, so that's not unusual.
Okay. All right.
Before the vote, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
there were two other conditions the planner mentioned, just
Yeah, on the
tack
list
those
there,
on it.
yeah.
With his also.
Patrick, that'll include the conditions that the planner had in her recommendation here.
Yeah, I've got
There's
those
three of
here.
them. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and we have support. Could I have the roll call, please?
Okay, Commissioner Gasson,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hauser,
Yes.
Chairman McGee,
Yes.
Councilman Sage,
Yes.
Mayor Bixson,
Yes.
Commissioner King.
Just real quick, since we are changing the parking for handicap accessible parking to 4 or 5, we're gonna make this so it changes the parking in lieu of, right? That'll be
To whatever
captured.
number it comes
Okay.
out, so we'll adjust that.
It'll be adjusted as well. Okay, approved.
Okay.
Commissioner Lord,
I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Commissioner Lord is a civil engineer, and his company is involved in the engineering on this project, just so you know why he's abstaining. He's not involved with the project, but it's his firm.
Mr. Chairman, I missed Commissioner Kenzuk.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you, and
I appreciate it.
all the best to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Okay.
support.
Well, folks, I told you it'd be a while, but it's a good example for everyone to see about the, how the commission goes about evaluating these projects. It's, the group that sits up here is pretty highly experienced in a variety of things in their private lives. All of us are residents of Rochester, but we have civil engineers, we have architects, we have construction managers, we have financial, we have bank finance people, we have another attorney sitting up here, we have someone who's a longtime representative of one of the large community associations in the city, in addition to our two political folks here. And we don't typically miss much. We try to cover the waterfront, and Vidya and Jeff Kratt, our attorney, keep us on the straight and narrow, along with Nick, who, I don't know if all of you know this, but he's probably spent 30 years as the chief planner for the city of Southfield. So we've been through these things. We try to make sure we're right on the line in terms of, following the ordinances and listening to the residents. So thank you. The next item is number 6B, St. John's Lutheran School. And again, Vidya, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the city's request, we have reviewed a proposal from St. John's Lutheran Church to build a 2-story, 31,174 square foot classroom addition to the existing church and school building. The site is on the south side of University Drive, just west of Helen Avenue, and is zoned RM1, which is multiple family residential. I'll put the site plan up on the screen for your benefit. If the Planning Commission remembers, this project has got a long history, going all the way back to March of 2018, when the applicant approached you with a gymnasium addition and classroom addition to the church. However, due to subsequently delays, construction delays, engineering delays, they came and sought approval from you for one portable classroom because the school enrollment had already started for fall of 2019. The Planning Commission approved one portable classroom. Subsequently, the applicant submitted an amended site plan where the addition was completely taken off because of costs involved and the pandemic delay. Then the applicant came back before you for the second portable classroom. Then the applicant at this time is back before you with the proposed two-story addition. This, however, at this time is including only classrooms for the project. It is to be mentioned that when the applicant initially went through the site plan approval process, although they discarded the addition that they had proposed, all other aspects of the site related to circulation, landscaping, lighting, dumpster, sidewalks, school bus drop-off, pickup, all of that was reviewed in detail by the Planning Commission and complied with by the applicant. I'll go over the details of the project in brief. Churches and houses of worship are permitted as a special exception in the RM1 district, which the site already has. Schools are also permitted as a special exception in the RM1 district, and since the addition is of a significant size, this project is seeking site plan and special exception approval at this time. Access to the site is of University. There are 2 access drives, which is a one-way circulation movement this way, and also drop off in the morning. When students are dropped off, cars come this way, they go down the site. I will scroll down to the next plan, which actually shows you. These are the cars. The drop off takes place here, and then the vehicles exit. There was, if the Planning Commission members recollect, there was significant amount of discussion on how the traffic needs to come out onto Helen and what restrictive movements need to be placed in order to ensure the traffic does not back up at the light between University and Helen. Nothing with regard to circulation on the site is changing at this time. The circulation pattern remains unchanged and as originally approved by the Planning Commission. The one important consideration at the time was this access to Alice Avenue to the south. As part of site plan approval, the Planning Commission had required that this access drive be gated off. This gate was to be used only for DPW and emergency personnel, not for school drop-off and pickup. The site plan just shows it this way. The gate is not shown, so I just want the applicant to verify that the gate, what was originally approved with the project as a restricted gate access, still remains in place. With regard to pedestrian access, there are sidewalks along all street frontages, and this is the new sidewalk connection being provided on the west side of the building, which will connect to this existing sidewalk and the sidewalk that goes along the east loop of the building. With regard to off-street parking, we have to take into account all of the uses on the site, which is the church services that take place, Sunday school, also when the school is in full functioning. At its peak usage, the site will require a total of 316 parking spaces. That is probably when the Sunday service takes place, Bible classes are on, and additional daycare is being provided within the building. The site has a total of 261 parking spaces and intends to accommodate the shortage with a shared parking agreement with 929 West University. That is the abutting site. To the east, on the other side of Helen, it is a doctor's office or a law office, and the applicant is going to submit. There was previously an agreement, but once the addition was abandoned, the agreement was not fully executed. Now that the applicant is proceeding with the addition and needs additional spaces, the document will be updated and provided to the city in a recordable form, an irrevocable shared parking agreement between the two sites. All of the existing and handicap accessible spaces meet ordinance requirements. With regard to landscaping, extensive landscaping was proposed as part of the original site plan approval. If the commission recollects, the applicant had very detailed landscaping, especially along the frontage on University, so that photographs for weddings, graduations, and other special events of the church can take place in front over there. At this time, the landscape plan proposes, I will scroll down, it's a little slow, bear with me. They are proposing foundation landscaping. If you can see over here, all of this is ornamental and perennial shrubs, flowering plants that will be all along the foundation of the building. This area was left as a lawn area when the original site plan was approved because the Planning Commission did not want to approve trees which would have to be taken out when the addition was built. So right now it's just lawn area, and the proposed building is not going to result in any removal of trees. With regard to screening, it does abut single-family residential to the south, on the south side of Alice. As part of the original site plan, significant landscaping was required on the south side of the parking lot. And I'll scroll back to the site plan so you can see the full site plan over here. So the Planning Commission had required landscaping along this whole perimeter area, this whole green belt. You had also required additional landscaping all along these areas. There is also a steep grade change here, so installation of a wall would have made no sense. So the applicant was required to plant dense stand of evergreens and juniper trees, which they did. With regard to trash removal, this is the dumpster enclosure that was constructed as part of the original site plan. No new additions are proposed at this time. Photometric plan includes minimal additions to the building. Once again, wall-mounted fixtures to match what is on the existing building, downward directed and shielded. As to architecture, the proposed addition is designed, if I can just go up here. I'll have to stop share for a second so that I can actually go up to the plan. Correct sheet. The applicant is proposing the addition to match up to what is constructed. So this is the proposed building addition, two-story addition. It is going to be constructed of brick, and they are going to have split face block for the foundation. The rest of it is brick. And this is, the roof is designed with a color metal siding roof and asphalt shingle roof to match what is on the existing building. The intent is to try and match the colors, although on the colored rendering, the colors do not appear to be the same. We just wanted the applicant to clarify that they'll do their best effort to get a brick color that matches the existing building so that the transition between the existing church and classrooms and the proposed addition is as seamless as possible. No new signage is proposed at this time, and the stormwater detention needs to be submitted to the city engineer for review and approval. Most of the site improvements for this project were part of the original approval granted by the Planning Commission. All of those have been installed. The proposed addition is adding minimal lighting. It's not altering the circulation, and it's adding just minimal amount of landscaping. What the main concern was the updated parking agreement. So at this time, it's our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant site plan and special exception approval for the proposed addition and expansion of St. John's Lutheran Church located at 1011 West University, subject to 3 conditions, which would be submission of a recorded copy of the shared parking agreement with the adjacent property as stated on the site plan, clarification that the building material colors, especially the brick, will match the existing building brick color to the extent it's possible to get the exact same match, and approval of drainage and utilities by the city's engineer. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Nick, the prior site plan approval is now void.
It's been completed, so, yeah.
It's been completed.
It's been completed.
Okay.
So they have all the site work
But
done.
any of the
engineered.
buildings, et cetera, that were in that site plan are,
Correct,
there are no standing approvals for anything
correct,
other than this?
correct.
Okay, very good.
I would
Questions?
also like to clarify, Mr. Chairman, that once the proposed addition is built, the applicant will be removing the 2 portable classrooms that the Planning Commission
Very good.
had approved on a temporary basis for the site.
Thank you. They're still approved for now. There's still a period of time that they can remain, if I recall.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the planner from the commissioners? Okay. Is the petitioner available? Who will speak for the petitioner? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Pastor Mark Schwichtenberg, lead pastor at St. John Lutheran Church and
Welcome
School.
back.
Yeah, good to see you all again. Vidya gave us a nice history tonight. We've been before you quite a few times, and our goal along the way has been to simply get out of the way with what God is doing among us. And we are so blessed to have a school ministry that is thriving in these exciting days. So preschool through 8th grade, that is really what this project is exactly about, is meeting the needs of students and families that continue to come our way for their education. You didn't mention too much about the portable classrooms, and just simply to say a few words on that. A big part of this project is to get the portables off our site. That was a temporary solution. from our local municipality here as well as with the state that we've been working with as well with the education side of things. And this is the answer to that. That's 4 total classrooms that are in the portables. We also have 2 lower level classrooms that were renovated in recent days. We've added 6 total in the last few years to meet the need. We're still turning away this past year 2 classes of students that we didn't have space for. So we feel the need to do this, and it's a clarity factor of not a build it, they will come. They're already here, and so we're trying to meet the need for that as well as for the future. We've been in the community for 102 years. Education has been at the heart of that all along, to be in family ministry, share the love of Jesus there. So we're excited about this project. I want to introduce our architect at this time, Gary Quapis. If he'd come forward. We have Andy Wakeland also working with us as well.
Yeah, I'll answer the questions, and also Andy will, concerning the questions raised by Vidya.
Do you have anything to add to Vidya's presentation?
No, not at the moment. We spoke to you before, and nothing else has really changed. We are in the process of obtaining a new agreement with the neighbor across the street. We stated that we would do that, and that process is taking place, again, legally, going back and forth and so forth. So we are going through and obtaining that document.
If this is approved, you're prepared to move forward as quickly as you can?
As quickly as we can. We would like to try to start next spring. Okay. That's our goal, because again, the classrooms, portables had to be removed by 24, by both the commission, by Rochester, but also the state of Michigan. Our agreement is for that time period. Her other comment, the coloration of the building, yeah, we're going to match the existing brick. I was trying to highlight the building more, so I pochade with the brick lines and so forth.
You mean
That's
in
what
the
made
rendering
it darker,
that we
yeah,
have?
on the rendering. But that, we are matching the colors that are there on the current building.
Very good. Drainage and utilities, that,
Yeah, which I'll let Mr. Wakeland
Yep,
address
thank you.
that issue.
Andy Wakeland, Giffords Webster. So the site originally was master planned for the entire development with what was proposed at the time. As part of standing operating procedures, we will have to go through engineering, but there won't be an issue with detention. It was already approved for a much greater surface.
so the capacity is on site to take care of it?
Yeah, we have more than enough capacity. So.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, this is scheduled for a public hearing tonight, and we'll consider the public hearing opened at 8:13. And I would ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter. And Rose, I'd like to ask if you have anyone on hold that would like to speak on this matter.
I see no one with their hand up.
Okay. Again, anyone in the group here that wants to speak on this? Okay, at 8:14, we'll consider the public hearing having been held, and I return this back to the commissioners for consideration. Anyone? Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I would like make a motion to approve the site plan and the special project with the couple changes that Vidya has.
Support. Been moved by the mayor, supported by Mr. Sage. Any other discussion? The roll call, Patrick.
Yes, sir. Mayor Bixham,
Yes.
Councilman Sage,
Yes.
Chairman McGee,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner Gasson,
Yes.
Commissioner King,
Yes.
Commissioner Lord,
Yes.
and Commissioner Kenzuk.
Yes. Very good. Congratulations, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Commissioners.
good luck to you. Okay, the next item, this is under considerations, and just for the audience's benefit, no action will get taken on anything on considerations tonight. This is our typical form of business where a petitioner comes first to the city administration with a proposal to do something, and the city administration, including Nick and his staff, look over what has been proposed, evaluate it relative to zoning, planning, all the other ordinances. If it's sufficiently close to the mark, they schedule it for a hearing, not a hearing, but a presentation in front of the planning commissioners. This is a fairly wide open discussion. We're going to look to the petitioners in these cases here to explain to us what they have proposed to do, and to have a back and forth relative to how it fits with the ordinance, how it fits with the neighborhood, et cetera. So we're fairly open-minded on these sorts of things at this point. It's until things are at the point of these, like these two items you just saw, the Roxy and St. John's School, where they've been vetted, filtered down, the back and forth has taken place, before we will schedule a public hearing. And neither of these tonight are here for a public hearing. There'll be no decisions made whatsoever on these two proposals tonight. The first one is 6A, Crook Cards, 210 Campbell Street. Continuing discussion to determine if the request is ready to set a public hearing if appropriate. Vidya.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have reviewed a request from Design House Architects on behalf of Mr. Crook to seek approval for a proposed warehouse and storage use on an existing industrial building. Now, the site is 2.41 acres. It is located at the south end of Campbell and Fraser Streets and is zoned I2, which is Industrial District 2. The proposed use is a warehouse/storage use, and it is a principal permitted use in the district. I will put up the site plan on the screen. So the applicant previously appeared before you on October 3rd, and there were a lot of issues with the site plan, a lot of missing information, which did not enable us to do a complete review of the project. The Planning Commission directed the applicant to address all of the outstanding concerns and come back before them, and the deadline given was this meeting. The applicant did come back with a revised site plan that addressed a significant number of concerns. I will go over those. Now, this is an existing industrial building. It's a really old building. It is non-conforming in terms of the rear and side yard setbacks. And the reason for that is, at the time it was built originally, there is a railroad to the south of the site, and this industrial building was built to use the railroad as a means to load and unload goods. But the railroad is long since gone. It's not used, but the building has remained, and it is non-conforming with respect to our setbacks. The structure was originally constructed in the 1950s, so it likely predates the zoning ordinance. Based on the zoning ordinance, the site requires there is a warehouse use in it, and then a small 3,200 square feet kennel and dog daycare facility. Between the two uses, the site requires a total of 26 parking spaces. The site plan shows a total of 34 parking spaces, including 2 handicap accessible spaces that you see over here. Now, the 12 trailers that were previously, if you recollect in your previous site plan, the trailers were parked over here, all over here. One was parked even on top of the cement pad here. Basically, they were all over the site. And there was a question whether the trailers were vehicles or were they substituting a building and being treated as permanent storage. The applicant at this time has moved the trailers into designated parking spaces as trailer parking. We had asked them to show turn movements. The applicant has shown turn movements, but if you look at this particular trailer's turn movements, this is the wheel, the outer wheelbase, it goes over these parking spaces. The applicant has addressed that concern by saying restricted parking only during scheduled trailer movement. I would like the applicant to clarify to the Planning Commission what exactly does that mean. Which are the vehicles that are going to be parked over here, and how often is a trailer going to come into the spot that would require whoever is parked here to remove all their vehicles so that the trailer can actually make this turn. The truck turning templates that are provided, if you look at this plan, the truck turning template over here just shows you these turn movements, and it shows you this movement. A typical truck turning template should show you turn movements all the way coming into the site, turning in, turning out of both these areas. So I had asked for an updated truck turning template. The plan also notes that all of the wall-mounted light fixtures will be replaced with new shielded light fixtures, and it refers to the lighting plan, but I believe the lighting plan accidentally got missed in the resubmission. The ordinance also requires a screen wall for all non-residential uses that abut a residential use. Now, the north side of the site abuts RT, which is 2-family dwelling homes, like these are all duplexes. So this is RT zone, single family and duplexes. So that is considered as the dividing line between the two. The ordinance requires installation of a masonry wall along the north property line that's about 4.5 feet from height of the prevailing grade on the subject site. They can install a taller screen along the east property line. Now, the applicant has noted that based on the topography and the existing vegetation, a 4.5-foot tall screen wall will really not serve the purpose at all. The Planning Commission has the discretion to modify the strict requirements of the ordinance with regard to the proposed screening that's being offered at this time. The plan also shows a new dumpster enclosure with gates on the southwest side of the site. Details of this enclosure with gates needs to be provided. And finally, as related to outdoor storage. Now, the ordinance has got a limitation on just how high outdoor storage, how high can materials or equipment be stacked for outdoor storage on any site. Now, the revised plan has relocated all the trailers so they are not right next to the residential dwellings, and the plan is proposing an 8-foot tall chain link fence with green fiberglass inserts along the trailer storage area. Now, this is the trailer storage area, and if you look at this thin line over here, this is a green chain link fiberglass slack inserted chain link fence that is enclosing only the outdoor trailer parking storage area in this spot. There were a lot more concerns on our previous review. At this time, these are the only concerns. Subsequent to my review letter, the applicant did submit a revised site plan addressing these concerns, according to the applicant. However, I received that plan only on Friday, and I have not had the opportunity to open or check it. However, I will look whether these conditions have been met if this project should be scheduled for a public hearing at your next meeting. I will review whether they have addressed these concerns. But at this time, the project is before you with the issues that were previously raised being addressed. The biggest issue that needs to be discussed by the Planning Commission is screening with regard to the north property line, which abuts the residential district. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank
So,
you.
Vidya, there's actually a newer site plan than what we're seeing here right now.
Yes, that plan was turned in late last week, Chairman McGee, and I received it on Friday. It's Monday, so I haven't had a chance to open and actually review it yet.
So we're not sure what might be updated from what we're seeing here right now. Go ahead.
I believe the applicant would have answered the questions that I had posed, specifically giving us a lighting plan that got missed, giving us truck turning templates and details of the dumpster. So nothing that would materially affect the layout on the plan that you see before you tonight.
And that screening of that trailer parking section is adequate to meet the ordinance?
This is the screen that's being proposed by the applicant. It's chain link with fiberglass slats. And the ordinance does not specify for the trailer storage area whether this is acceptable or not. It just says it shall be determined by the Planning Commission.
Okay. Okay, questions for Vidya from the commissioners?
Mr. McGee, I actually have a question through you to the city manager, if that's okay?
Please.
Okay. Can you update us, Mr. Banda, when we were here last time, it seemed like it was a binary issue. There were trailers there, and those were not permitted, or if you wanted to move them inside, you had to have inside storage and all that. Can you advise us as of November 7th, what is the status of those trailers? Are they still out there on that property?
They're still on the property.
Okay. And-
Along the north property line where they always were, they're not moved.
And have you had any subsequent conversations with Mr. Kruk about those trailers since we were here last time?
No, sir.
And I guess to the city planner, has anything in your letter taken into consideration, because I didn't see it, those trailers in effect of how that's going to be dealt with?
The applicant, at the last meeting, the applicant had not clarified whether these are actually trailers or vehicles that move, or are they trailers that are going to permanently be sitting in one place, which would actually mean you're using them for storage instead of building a building addition, like City Manager Banda said. You know, if you want storage, just build a building addition and put your storage in there. Don't keep it in permanently parked trailers. The applicant then said these are not permanent trailers. These are actually vehicles that can be moved and they created designated parking spaces for these trailers, and they're showing like a cab to which the trailer can be hitched and moved in and out. I think the question would be for the applicant, how often do they anticipate these storage units actually moving in and out of the site?
Any other questions for video? Okay, could we have the applicant come forward, please?
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please tell us your name and address.
I'm George Kruk, owner of Kruk Cards at 210 Campbell Street in Rochester.
Is your architect with you tonight?
Yes, design house, yep.
Yes, sir. You're a different one.
Same firm.
Same firm. Okay, good enough. Floor is yours. Please explain what's going on. We don't know what you turned in Friday, so could one of you please explain?
We went ahead and addressed Video's concerns, and that was submitted, I think you said on Tuesday. And then we've moved the trailers to this new site plan, as you can see up there, from the northern, where all the trailers are on the northern edge of the property. We've moved them to we got a new site plan up here to address Video's concerns. And then she had more concerns. I think she reviewed, we submitted like early October, like within a week of the meeting, the October 3rd meeting, we submitted the changes. And then she responded, I believe it was, like a week ago, and we got the response back to her on Tuesday, and she has not had enough time to respond to our changes, addresses to her changes, which you have in front of you. I believe you have all of our response.
This is what we have. So do you have what did you do to this? She said she received something on Friday.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that submission came in too late to get a full review, so we didn't send it out to the commissioners.
What was done relative to this?
Peter Stuhlreier, Design House, 3300 Auburn Road, Auburn Hills. The truck radius program was extended to the west all the way out. That was primarily the concern, and I believe there was a photometric added, some photometric data added to show additional lighting.
But it still impacted the parking spaces?
Yeah, the parking spaces are always going to be impacted by those coming and going. And by the way, those are 5 trailers at 7 shipping containers, not vehicular, just for the record.
Do you have the means to move those containers? They're not vehicles.
I have the means to move those containers, yes.
Do you own the means, or you contract to have that?
I would contract that out.
Okay.
How regularly do you see yourself moving those trailers? At all or none, or not at all?
Very little.
Very little. So ostensibly, they're going to stay there almost permanently, under the premise that they're going to be moved someday, but likely not.
Correct.
Okay.
Others?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't understand the numbers that Mr. Stuhlreier mentioned, 5 and containers. Well, can you
There's
repeat
5
that?
trailers
5 trailers.
with wheels
Okay.
and 7 shipping containers on the ground. I think 45 footers, 40 footers?
They're 40 footers.
40 footers.
Okay, so, yeah.
Is it the trailers on the left side there and
Those.
Correct.
Thank you.
the other 7 are shipping containers?
Thank you.
Question.
Mr. Mayor?
Can I ask a question of the city manager?
Yes.
So, Mr. City Manager, do you feel like there's anything different from the last time we were here?
They did move the trailers off the north property line. It was the Darrows that were affected mostly here, so administration's going to stay with the same thing. If you're going to use them for permanent storage, build a building. If you're not, you have trailers with painted green with tires on them. Yes, there's a screen wall around, but they're not, the trailers are taller than 6 feet tall, so you've kind of circumvented the ordinance, in my opinion, to get what you want, which is just keep those trailers
Create
on
that
your
mini
site.
lot.
Right, so if they were going to be emptied in a year and gone, maybe it's a temporary situation, but that's not the intent, so.
Then we'll be back here every year.
It's better because it gets them off the property line where they shouldn't be anyway. That's why we went to court, but they've made strides to locate them in areas away from the residential. That's all I can say.
How about the screening on the north side? Can that be done other than with a wall? I know there's a lot of vegetation along there now.
So in the legal documents, there was an acknowledgement by the city, I think it's item 5, the acknowledgement by the city in the last site plan approval that the north wall was not necessary. That was Ken Johnson's comment in the minutes, and it was acknowledged in the legal docs. So if you go over there and see it, it would be a shame to tear down all the trees to try to build a wall.
And I would agree with that, but that had to do with not trailers and stuff. But I agree, it's not practical to put a wall, you're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
It's either have storage outside and do it right, keep everything below 6 feet and
Can
cover
you
it. or don't.
supplement that planting along there to make it thicker yet so that it actually screens? There's a lot
I would
of,
assume.
It's pretty thick right now, and you can, yeah. You can-
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I visited the site and I have some concerns because from Heil Street, you can actually see, most of the vegetation is leafy or deciduous trees.
Yeah.
And now that we're in the fall, most of those leaves have fallen off. So if you're traveling down Heil Street, you can actually see the building.
Okay.
So I've got some concerns about how dense it actually is. I didn't notice any evergreens or anything of that nature to actually screen the property.
Vidya, the planning commission can get past the 4.5-foot wall with vegetation?
The ordinance allows the planning commission discretion to determine what type of screening is adequate, whether additional height of screening is required, whether masonry wall is required, or additional trees. Yes, there is ample flexibility in the ordinance for the planning commission to make that determination.
One other comment. Excuse me. Another thing is if you take a look at the Oakland County Property Gateway and take a look at the aerial photographs, a fair amount of the vegetation appears to be on the residential property, and probably the majority is on the commercial property. So I guess my concern in that respect is that in part of the screening is being relied upon for the residents there. They have every right to move that at some point.
Yes.
If they want to cut it down. So if they do, that screening disappears.
Thus the reason for concrete walls, because they work year-round.
Or something different.
Yeah, okay. Any other, Christian, do you have?
I do remember, I believe the adjacent property owners are here. And so
Are you here this evening? It was, yeah, okay, thank you.
They spoke last time. I'd be curious to see what they think about this as well. But for me, I just think that it's just the same thing with a different package in a sense. It seems like it's a creative way to circumvent what we were specifically not interested in discussing, at least I was.
What I'm struggling with is that lot where 8 of these units are confined inside 8-foot fence. Does that legally constitute screening? Or does it have to be done at the property lines if you want to have outdoor storage?
More than the screening, Chairman McGee, my biggest concern is I was under the impression that all of those were movable trailers. The applicant, Mr. Stuhlreiter, just stated that only some of them are movable, the rest of them are storage units that are going to be parked there. The last review letter that I did on this project, I quote from that letter, I clearly said that portable trailers cannot be considered as permanent structures. If it's going to be a permanent structure that is used for storage, it needs to have foundations and it needs to comply with all of the setbacks. So my impression when this site plan was submitted with the fact that it was shown as truck turning movements is that all of these are trailers that can regularly be moved in and out. If the intent is to have only a couple of them or 3 or 4 of them movable and at least a few of them permanently sitting metal boxes on the ground, that's not what the ordinance allows for. It's once again permanent, a trailer unit masquerading as a building by itself.
Mr. Chairman, to clarify, the 7 I think Vidya was referring to are the 7 not trailers. They're the storage units. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's what was stated.
Our opinion is that this is outdoor storage, and those are items being stored in a compliant outdoor storage area.
Vidya, how do you respond to that?
The ordinance ordinance can consider the storage units as outdoor open storage under section 2311. But the ordinance also says that all such storage shall be screened from public view from public street and from adjoining properties by an obscuring wall or fence not less than 6 feet nor more than 8 feet high. The required height of the wall shall be determined by the Planning Commission so as to properly screen all materials, vehicles, and wastes. Vehicles and equipment over 8 feet high must be properly screened but need not be completely screened above 8 feet. In no instance shall any open storage of equipment, vehicles, and/or materials be permitted within the front yard, which the applicant did move. So if the applicant's intention is to have these as permanent outdoor storage, then it's up to the Planning Commission whether the chain link with fiberglass is acceptable or if the applicant has to put in a masonry screen wall 6 foot tall enclosing the whole area.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Vice Chairman Hauser. I mean, this is exactly where we were last time. To me, this is actually, and I've been on this planning commission, well, Mr. Gasson's been here longer, but I've been on the planning commission a long time. This is really one of the more cynical approaches that I've seen, and I just reject it. So I have no support at all for this.
Any other comments? Eric?
I don't know if this is a legal question that we're up against or not. I feel like we're kind of walking a line between an opinion of a commission versus, what's, required as part of the ordinance of us, where it's not looking for us for an opinion. So,
Jeff, I don't know if you can help us
unclear on
clarify this. It's,
Well,
you've already been in court with this, so.
Yes, and we're here because it was in violation of the approved site plan with the trailers where they are now. That was not permitted under the existing site plan, so that's why we went to court. We have a court order that addresses the applicant going through this process. So that's where that is. To address Commissioner Lord's concerns, I tend to agree to a point that if they meet the ordinance, then that's one thing. But when you get into some discretionary issues, I mean, of course, the trailers aren't going to be obscured if it's an 8 foot. I mean, Vinny just read the open storage is 8 feet is the limit. It's not going to completely screen it, and it actually says in here, vehicles and equipment over 8 feet must be properly screened, but need not be completely screened above 8 feet. So, while I do appreciate the fact that the fence by our own ordinance couldn't be higher than 8 feet. So, I'm not going to substitute my opinion. I mean, it certainly is a lot better than it was the first time because everything's pulled away from the north side of the property. But, it is a fine line of is this outside storage, is this parking? I mean, if the commission believes that they're parking, and these are in the ones that are considered vehicles are in parking spaces, then that's probably okay. But if it's deemed outside storage, because, if it walks like a duck, it's a duck, right? But if that's what it is, if it's considered outside storage, then it has to meet the outside storage requirements. And I guess that's where I think the site plan is sufficient to move it forward to a public hearing, but it's going to ultimately be Planning Commission as to whether or not it meets the ordinance requirements.
What about the north property line? I'm just asking a question. What if it was completed with evergreens instead of a wall?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think that if we're going to have the discretion to say, a wall wouldn't do anything, I don't think we'd say we do nothing. I think, especially if it's deciduous trees that we're looking at there to protect the view from those homeowners there.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you want to schedule for a public hearing and we could set it out a ways and We could ask the petitioner to respond to, we need screening on that north property line. And we probably agree, a 4.5-foot concrete wall accomplishes nothing for anybody. But we need it screened, and the deciduous trees don't do it.
And I don't think we have a necessary problem with the screening. It's how you read the court document item 5, whether or not that
little lot
that
within the
relieves us
lot.
of the screening or not.
Well,
Because
Mr. Chair, if I can, we had this discussion at court, and specifically Mr. Stuhlreit was there, and in his words, he fully acknowledged that if the planning commission is going to require different screening on the north side, then so be it, were his exact words.
Thank you.
Now, what he's pointing to about back in the day, manager, the former city manager, that was, even if you assume that the city manager said, oh, we don't have to have the screening on the north side, well, this is a different site plan.
Yeah.
I mean, so, a different, they're looking for, if they were gonna move all those trailers off and keep it back, which is one option, is they can
Go back to the old
keep
site
it
plan.
to the, to the existing approved site plan, then I would say his argument would be, have more, more punch to it. But they're looking for a different approved site plan, which means that screening needs to be addressed. And if planning commission feels that evergreens to make that better, I do understand the grading, and which is part of the reason why the former manager put that in there, is because the grade was such that a 4-foot wall wasn't gonna do anything. But that's not the
evergreens
only
could.
option.
Evergreens could screen it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I ask, in the event this comes back, is it, and I don't mean to give you more work, Jeffrey, but is it possible to get a copy of the court pleadings in that court order, just so I could have some context? And thank you. That'd help me at least understand a little bit more of the
Have
history.
them put it in our packet if you would.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you.
It's a public document.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question for Vidya. With these changes to the site plan, and I would assume that the trailers being outdoor storage are not considered parking, does this meet the parking requirements for the building with the
Yes.
remaining parking?
They do have adequate parking. In addition to the screening along the north property line, Commissioner King, I think the commission also has to decide whether this chain link with the fiberglass slats is acceptable, because the applicant is calling it open outdoor storage. If it's outdoor storage, the ordinance requires a 6-foot tall masonry wall, or an option or a modification of it by the planning commission. So while the planning commission is discussing landscaping as a screening along the north property line, I would also request that you discuss this screening and determine whether it's acceptable or not, or whether you want the screening placed here or placed closer at the property line.
So the masonry wall would be required on the property line, not necessarily those internal faces.
Correct. The ordinance does not say it has to be just over there. The ordinance says that all outdoor storage shall be screened. So typically screen walls, fences are placed on the property line. So if you think it will help screen the property better, the masonry wall can be placed. If you decide you want a masonry wall over there, it would be placed along the property line.
With the
or
chain
along
link on the
center
other
line,
three
whichever.
sides. The chain link on the other 3 sides.
It's up to the
Yeah.
planning commission.
Yeah.
could I submit something for the commission?
Well, what is it?
Just aerial pictures of various outdoor storage sites in Rochester with trailers and containers.
No, don't give it to us. We don't have the means to
Take it
handle
to
that.
the
So give it to the administration, and they can take it from there. This is not going to, if we schedule for a public hearing, it's not going to pass. I can tell you that right now, until that screening's dealt with. I'm going to ask the administration and the attorney to look again at the screen wall that you proposed, and we'll see if it works. But definitely the screening on the north side does not work. And the existing vegetation, sounds like you own some of it, you don't own some of it, but it's deciduous. So it's not screening. So 6 months of the year, it's barren. So that's going to have to be addressed. And if it's not a taller masonry wall, it's going to have to be with vegetation. It's going to have to be with evergreen vegetation to make it work.
Our concern is that if we were to move ahead to a public hearing, the schedule of comments and return comments would cause us to be in the same boat where we don't have the current plan up. So do we do a public hearing 2
Why don't we put it to the
months from now?
first meeting in January then?
I would agree with that.
Do you have a problem with that? It's 2 months, it's a lot of time. Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
What's the motion?
We'll put it on for a public hearing in 2 months, with the understanding that the screening absolutely doesn't work, so when you come back, we're moving it forward that way. And I'm not hearing a definitive answer on the screening.
Right. I guess the question is what happens, and this, I'm just saying hypothetically, in January, we come back and it's the same thing.
I
when
would
do we get
hope
to the end of
that the
runway?
administration would let us know in late December that they have not received anything.
Okay.
We'll make a motion and we'll cancel the public hearing.
All right, that's fair.
Simple as that.
I would say, you deny the site plan.
Right.
Which now kicks in the court order that says you have to get it off the site, all the stuff off the site.
So we'll
It's
do
pretty
that in
simple.
January.
That's fine.
Are we comfortable with that? We need a motion.
I'll
to
make a
that
motion
effect.
for that, please.
You want to
Motion
repeat it
to-
quickly?
Sure. We'll motion to adjourn this to the first hearing in January. Their applicant's going to submit a revised plan consistent with the screen wall issue.
Set it for a public hearing.
Set it for a public hearing. Yep.
First meeting in January.
First meeting in
There's
January,
support for that.
2023.
Support. That's been moved and supported.
Okay.
Any other discussion? The roll call, please.
Was that Commissioner Gasson with the support?
Lord.
Okay. Vice Chairman Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner Lord,
Yes.
Chairman McGee,
Yes.
Secretary Sage,
Yes.
Mayor Bixson,
Yes.
Commissioner King,
Yes.
Commissioner Gasson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Kenshuk.
Yes.
We're trying to work with you.
Thank you.
And that's 2 more months, so let's hope we get it done right.
Yes, sir.
I don't think there's any mystery about what we're looking for.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And now the moment we've all been waiting for, so patiently. We appreciate that. The next item is 6B, Paint Creek Luxury Condominiums, 704 Woodward. Initial discussion of a request for conditional rezoning requests from I-1 Limited Industrial to RM2 Multiple Family Residential, and set the public hearing if it's determined that submission's adequate. Vidya,
So I'm going to take this one.
okay. I don't think we have a,
You don't.
okay.
All right, so I'm going to take you in the Wayback Machine so we can catch everybody up in the audience so they know where we're at, where we've been, et cetera. So when the Rushes closed the business years ago now, which was Solaronics, which made lighting, and they moved to Auburn Hills and took advantage of a tax break, they didn't anticipate this staying vacant, I'm sure, for this long. So we've seen this 5 times. We've had 5, and 1 that you don't know about. I'm sorry, 4 that you know about and 1 that you don't know about. So initially, when the property went for sale, we were looking at building out our DPW campus. So we thought, we went and toured with the director of the Public Works and our whole staff. We went to that building to see, is there any way we could buy that building from the Rushes, turn that into our DPW expansion, and redo the front for offices and eliminate having to go out and build brand-new buildings and retrofit our campus. So a couple things. We knew the site as a partial dirty site of it. The northeast side, there's a bad spot in the parking lot. It's not wickedly contaminated, but it's contaminated. Soil contamination. And it is right by Paint Creek. So we know that's got to be dealt with at some point. It's not migrating that way, but it would have to be dealt with at some point. So the city would have incurred that cost if we got to that point. It's good that it's encapsulated right now with mostly asphalt and some gravel.
You passed.
Yep, so we passed on that thing. So the next thing that came in was a young architect and her husband came in and showed the planning commission, I think, at a study meeting, yep, the 32 houses or 36 small houses. They weren't tiny houses, they were smaller. Well, they took a look at it, took a run at it, and for the same reason, the next 4 I'm going to explain, didn't do it between the cost of the property, the cost of demolition of the facility, which is a huge building, it's like 60,000 feet, I believe, and the cleanup of the site, it didn't financially make any sense. Next folks that came in, we're looking for indoor public storage, which we actually thought was a great idea because limited traffic. We looked at one over on the old plastics building on 2nd Street and encouraged that. It would have been great. You just come in, they were going to renovate the front, have their offices in the front, and then work it out in the back. Again, due to the cost of the renovation and having to sprinkler the building, et cetera, they passed on that site. The next one came in was a indoor dog park. So they wanted to turn the whole place into a giant dog facility like we have on South Street. Again, by the time they got through the building official and the sprinklering and the noise, et cetera, they walked away from that deal. And then the next one was, if you remember this one, the gentleman came in and he started with an axe throwing facility like they have in someplace, Shelby, or not Shelby, but in Wayne County somewhere, and then a bar, and then 16 outdoor volleyball courts, which would have been a massive amount of traffic. And we did everything we could to discourage them. And then when they found the cost of doing that, and we let them know what traffic concerns the residents have, they walked away from that one. So that brings us to our latest petitioner. This petitioner has come in and met with the city a dozen times probably, and done the most thorough work that I've seen prepping them for tonight. Because we know what the residents think. We know what staff thinks about this. We knew what the master plan called for, what the zoning called for, the process. So these other 4 that came in never got that far. So we've spent literally months with this developer prepping them to make sure that they can answer everything that we could think of, staff-wise, and what the residents have brought up numerous times to us as we looked at what we would do as we did the master plan, even on this property, what to do. The previous master plan had this scheduled for RT 2-family residential. The new master plan did not change that. The new master,
over there.
the new master plan.
All right.
Somebody want to mute themselves there? Whoever just said, I want to drive over there, just, if you can mute yourself. So, the new master plan that was adopted in November still called this RT 2-family residential. The difference between when the developer first came in, the intent of the planning commission, as we were going through the master plan, was to put a PICA designation on this property. This property, we're going to do 3 of them. This property, the Albertson property, that was Hell Row, and then over on the elevator. We wanted all those to be potential intensity change areas, so we could work with the developer, knowing these were tough sites, and decide if, in fact, there was a community benefit for whoever proposed whatever to go forward. I can't answer why, but under the former direction of management, we did not include this as a PICA. So that came as a surprise to the developer who had been working through this process, assuming it would be a PICA. So the only way you can go do this properly is a good, solid planning concept, which is come in and put the underlying zoning to be whatever development they want to propose. So in this case, we had to call them up and say, you can't use a potential intensity change area. You have to determine what your project would require as underlying zoning. So that would be RM2. So we read a lot what's been going on with the petitions and all the stuff from the residents. We appreciate everybody's correspondence. We read them all, and we're getting that out to the Planning Commission as quickly as they come in. So someone had pointed out, in RM2, if you look on the chart, the existing chart, it says you can go up to 8 stories. So we knew that would be a problem because we don't want 8 stories. We don't know that we want 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, anything other than 2 right now, which is in the master plan as RT. It allows 2.5 stories at maximum 35 feet. The reason it's 2.5 was because if you look at the apartments on Ludlow, some of those are subgrade, right? So they actually have the apartments subgrade, and they were able to build surface parking around it to accommodate it. On this site, to maximize it out, they had to put parking on the first site. They don't want to dig into the contaminated soil. So everybody that talked about this was talking about having to go taller, 1 story, so you could have parking on the first floor. And they'll explain that when they make their presentation, I'm sure. So the ultimate goal was to go back to the developer and say, there's another way to do this. And if we have questions, Vidya can answer this on a planning perspective. There's such a thing that's allowed called a conditional rezone. So you come in and say, you voluntarily, the developer says, I want to rezone this to RM2, but only for the site plan that I am submitting. So in this case, it's a 4-story building, step back that they're talking about. They wouldn't ask for a pure RM2, which would mean they could come in and if they met the ordinance, go to 8 stories. So So they know that they voluntarily would have to ask for a conditional rezone, which would restrict them to exactly the site plan that was built. If they ever sold the property, somebody wanted to change the use, they'd have to come back for a different rezoning. So that's a restriction that they can voluntarily ask for consideration of planning commission, would then make a recommendation on the zoning only to the city council. So 2 public hearings, 2 processes. If the conditional rezoning was approved based on the site plan, then it would go to the site plan process. Just the site plan would come back to the planning commission. So it's a little bit convoluted, but there's been no, we told the developer all the concerns we all had, the trail crossing, the traffic counts, the intersection at Ludlow and University, the intersection at Woodward, the presumed residential character of the area, the fact that this is an industrial building and that the Rushes have the right to release that out tomorrow and open it up with 300 person shift. They could do that. And we know that, but we don't use that as nobody threatened us with that. The Rushes didn't, the developer didn't. We're not saying that's the right thing for the community, but all those things will be discussed here. So tonight is just an informational sharing, so you can see the first look at what the developer is proposing. If you feel good about it, that you want to set it for them to formally apply, to have that first meeting, to have Vidya do a full review, then after that, set it for a public hearing for the conditional rezoning, and then to council, then back to planning. So this is a long process. The developer's well aware of that. They've done traffic studies. They've done more than any developer I've seen has done to get to this point. They didn't have to do a traffic study. They didn't have to do the sustainability thing. They did that on their own. We gave them no hope for anything. They wanted to do that to get to this point. So we told them, because you're going to get asked by the planning commission with the residents also for this, so you might as well do it now and be open books. Let's see what we want to do and see if there's something that we can come to an agreement. If not, it won't happen. So that's the background.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Nick? Vidya, do you have anything?
I would just like to give the Planning Commission a brief on what exactly is the difference between traditional rezoning versus conditional rezoning. Traditional rezoning is when an applicant asks to change the zoning of a property to a designation that is there in your master plan. So basically, they are saying, change my zoning from commercial to residential. Master plan is advocating residential. That is a traditional rezoning because it's in keeping with your master plan. Conditional rezoning is when the applicant is requesting change from one zoning to another zoning designation that doesn't necessarily match with the master plan, but in the opinion of the applicant, it furthers the goals and policies of the master plan. And in order to accomplish that, they offer you certain conditions. That is why it is called a conditional rezoning. Now, the key thing to remember in a conditional rezoning is the conditions have to be voluntarily offered by the applicant or the petitioner. The Planning Commission or the City Council cannot place any conditions or demand any conditions. All of the conditions have to be voluntarily from the applicants. They have to read, but based on the public input and the Planning Commission discussion and feedback, they have to read the mood and they have to come up with conditions that they believe furthers the intent of the master plan and goals. It would be up to the Planning Commission and the City Council to either accept those conditions or reject them. You cannot modify or demand additional conditions. So just keep that in your mind as you're listening to what this petitioner is presenting before you tonight.
Eric, did you have something?
No, I think I'm pretty clear. What I was thinking was the 8 stories that you mentioned, that's in the RM2 district. The current zoning is 2.5 stories, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
In the industrial zone?
No, if it was RT.
If it was in the master.
The master plan says that, right now it's industrial, so it could be whatever industrial allows. So, but for residential, they would kick to the RM2, which, I'm sorry, I said RM1, RM2, that would allow the 8 stories, but it changes setbacks, et cetera, but correct.
Okay. Okay, is the petitioner here? The floor, sir, is yours. Tell us who you are.
My name's Doug Hamborski. We're Champion Development Group. In the spirit of transparency, I've got what I think is a wonderful PowerPoint presentation. I intend to get through it quickly, but we understood that it might be hard to see the screen. So all we've done is print out the presentation you're about to see. And so for just assistance, we're going to hand these out so the neighbors can read what slide 6 says if they want to. Is that all right?
That's fine, yes.
And I'll get
Just
Thanks.
give them to somebody, let them pass and get going. You can start.
Yeah, here, if you just, we'll pass them down for you.
Here, thank you.
So the project team, myself, Doug Hamborski, I'm an architect, and the owner's rep with Champion Development. We have with our team tonight here Len Nadolski, who's basically the CEO, and Michael Nadolski, who's the passer-outer. We also have with us this evening Richard Rush Jr. and Robert Rush, who presently own the Solaronics property and have for decades, and operated their business on that property for decades. We have Stuckey Vitale Architects. We have Monica Dragon from the architectural firm, and they're the designers of our building. Stonefield Engineering are our civil engineers that will also be involved with stormwater management, survey work, landscaping, site lighting, photometrics, etc. To address the traffic concerns, we've hired Giffords Webster, and we have Michael Darga here from Giffords Webster. And then, as Nick mentioned, there's an identified history of some environmental issues. So we have hired PM Environmental, and we have their CEO, Michael Kolka, here to speak to some environmental concerns. And then once we get through all that wonderful paperwork, we're hoping to hire Mr. Frank Rewald to build it for us, and he must have done something bad because he's sitting in the back of the room. So that's who we are. And so what we want to do is review what I call a genuinely unique site. You know, the Paint Creek Trail used to be a railroad line back when the Rushes probably first bought their property. Now, of course, it's a wonderful source of recreation. We've got the actual creek on our north side. Further to the west, we've got multifamily existing, I don't know how old, 30, 50-year-old residential properties. To the south, we have a combination of the park and some more industrial use with Dillman Upton lumber. And then to the east, we have this combination of the DPW yard, along with some mixed commercial, and then there's a ball diamond. So we've got a real potpourri of neighbors and uses surrounding our property. But one of the most significant things is to the north and west and most of the south, we have this wonderful dense tree line that really kind of shields or shelters our property. So the essence, quick little feature of the scope of what our vision is for this property is we intend to build condominiums. Luxury amenities are going to include a package room, a sky deck looking over the creek, lounge areas, work areas. We found that in the other properties we developed, a lot of our residents are working from home. And so they want nooks and crannies to go set their laptop in and get out of their units and work. So we're including those in all of our developments. We'll have on-site management, barbecue areas, fire pits. We're not planning on having a swimming pool. We think we'll have a more mature residential makeup. We are going to have covered parking, lush landscaping, what we consider to be a very attractive, what's called modern mountain design theme. You'll see that. And we're looking to develop 106 total units. Regarding zoning, the property is zoned I-1. That's the lavender color, purple. Our request is for RM2 zone, as Nick mentioned, with conditional zoning, restrictive conditions. We will define those in the next couple of slides. We are currently surrounded primarily by RM1, which is the orange color, which is the multifamily residential, and more I1 purple to the east and to the south. And then the park, a lot of the park uses are shown in some of the hatched areas that follow the creek. It should be noted that the closest single-family house to the north is around 515 feet, and that's to the backyard. To the east, along Woodward, is around 770 feet, and to the south, along Ludlow, is around 700 feet. So we're quite a ways from our property line to actual single-family residential. So, a little preamble on how we were trying to work with the zoning ordinance and our thoughts. So the property is zoned I1, Industrial 1, has been for decades. We thought we'd just splash up, and again, with your handouts, feel free to read this or go online to the ordinance. But within every zoning district, there are two batches, if you will, of uses. One is called permitted principal uses. The thought that maybe just the Rushes would find some miracle 50 or 60,000 square foot user to come right in and occupy their building, you know, that has a certain degree of odds. But if you look at just what's allowed without any rezoning, the kinds of uses that could end up in I1, that's why we wanted to at least put these up here. That's why Mr. C's Car Wash is able to be on their property. And here are some, I just highlighted a couple, but there's a variety of uses there. And then beyond that, there are these special exception uses, which is, it's interesting. It starts out that all of the uses in the B1 General District, which is another whole batch of uses. I invite you to, the Planning Commission's familiar with those, but I'd invite you to see them. They may be allowed. Conditional special exception uses require additional public hearings. They're not automatic by right, but they are allowed going through the process. Lumber and planing mill, if Dillman Upton wanted to expand, they needed some extra room, maybe they'd take some of the property. Outdoor commercial recreation, golf domes, etc. What's really more likely if our project doesn't go forward and the Rushes need to look at getting some use out of their valuable asset, what might be more possible without requiring any public hearings or any rezoning is to create a little industrial campus. Instead of a 50 or 60,000 single-use building, you could have a 5,000 square foot veterinary clinic, 10,000 square foot car repair center, a research laboratory. Any and all of these uses could easily be developed, each one with 5 to 10 to 20, people, staff coming and going during the day. So one thing, just as Nick highlighted, because there's already been a couple of attempts, note to the value and cost of the property and proximity to the DPW yard, and low density or single family residential development is just not economically possible. And we don't mean that in a threatening way, just in a business way to share that with you. And part of the sharing is that it's already been attempted in previous submissions. By the way, one of our strengths, Len and I, we go back 25 years, is Len particularly, we have a history of taking what we call troubled properties, troubled sites that had previous attempts at projects and failed. And we work with the community, we work with city administration, we work with planning commission, city council, and we just try to put something together that might fit. And that's our pedigree, it's who we are, that's how we try to work. So a little bit about that. So we've touched base on the conditional rezoning request. None of the other RM2 or mobile homes, none of it worked in a variety of ways. The closest fit was RM2. But we don't need all of the grandeur and all of the mass and all of the features of RM2. So as Nick mentioned, we want to voluntarily condition ourselves on what we would want for this property. So in blue are the conditions that we intend to work into our site plan and building plans. So first, we met with Ms. Ford at the Trail Creek, the Paint Creek Trail, and we're going to voluntarily add a signalized caution lights at the point of the trail as it crosses Woodward. We're also going to provide additional landscape along our property between us and the Paint Creek Trail to, again, visually shield or shelter the trail from our residents and from our building. We will limit the height to 50 feet to the building parapets. 100 foot of height is allowed in RM2. Don't want that, don't need that, but we do need 50. We would limit the building to 4 stories, which is really 3 stories above parking. And by the way, the parking, the reason we need that is if we were to lower the building and spread the parking out, you'd have less landscape material, you'd have more impervious paving and what have you. So this is our approach to have a lush, attractive site, but we need the 4 stories. Would limit the density to 106 units, and that's essentially based on RM2 square foot calculations. So much square foot of land for a 1-bedroom, so much for a 2-bedroom. You put it all in a blender and you end up with 106 units. We'll provide full parking as defined in the zoning ordinance. A lot of these, well, we just saw the Roxy needed to buy some parking. They're downtown, whole different application here, but we're able, with that grade level parking, to park everything, and then the final condition is that we're going to provide an additional 31 spaces for guests that would happen to come visit our residents. So let's touch base on the master plan and RT2 and the plan that was just confirmed in April of this year. So there are 2 or 3 significant themes that we've read in your master plan that we think our project would be literally the poster child for the master plan's goals and objectives. The first is need for alternate housing options. In a mature community with single-family homes, there are very few options for condominium living, for smaller footprint 1- and 2-bedroom units, for not having to mow your lawn, et cetera. And the master plan has repeated descriptions throughout encouraging development and, more importantly, redevelopment. The master plan's not looking to tear down a bunch of single-family houses and come in with condominiums. It's exactly this application of taking, in this case, an industrial use and upgrading it to a residential use. Next is a goal to develop housing with greater density. Those words are in the master plan, units per acre, and the ties to sustainable development. And this project, we think respectfully, heads clearly in that direction. Another issue that is mentioned in the master plan is need to increase city revenue. The taxes coming from an industrial property, this or X, the taxes that'll come to the city with 106 luxury condominiums is going to be a lot greater than X, and that will help offset costs in the future and all kinds of goals that the city would have. So I just cut and pasted, it's an eye chart. You can't see any of this, but this is all in your master plan, where these themes that I just outlined are identified and highlighted in a number of areas. So we heard from a little birdie that there may be some concerns about traffic. So literally on day one of, once we signed our contract with the Rushes, we sought after and hired Giffords Webster, who's one of the preeminent traffic engineer and consultants, analysts in the region. And we have Mr. Darga from their team here. And we commissioned a full traffic study. I meant to bring it, it's a half-inch thick. The city has full copies available, and, we're, again, open book and would make that available. One thing that we learned as part of this process is some definitions and some designs of streets. And we learned that Woodward and Ludlow, that kind of L-shaped with the bend right at our property, are called officially, they're designated as collector streets. I wasn't sure what a collector street was, even though I'm an architect. So the actual definition is that they are collectors, are major and minor roads that connect local roads, side streets, if you will, and streets with arterials. And in this case, the arterial streets are University to the south, Main to the east. Regarding the capacity of Woodward, of collector streets just in general, there are all these charts that Mr. Darga can speak to more eloquently than I ever will, but he did share this chart as one of the standards. It has a wide range. That LOS is level of service. There's LOS B, C, D, E, and then there are these D factors, K factors. The net of this is that a collector street, a two-lane, one each direction collector street, can have as much as 17.8 thousand cars per day capacity. All right? Now, what's good about your circumstance is you don't have anywhere near that with your level of service, and their report confirms that. However, on traffic, we want to point out that traffic is constantly changing on these collector streets, on any street for the most part. And the traffic on Ludlow and Woodward have changed due to recent pandemic, reduced activity, people not traveling to work, vacant properties such as currently the Solaronics property, which has been vacant for about 3 years now. Seasons, vacation time, school activities, recreation activities, people coming and going from the parks. So what we've learned, we got a printout from the police department, and we learned that really the last year or so, traffic, I think it was on Ludlow, was down to about 2,000 cars a day. And that's a pretty reasonable, and a capacity that has up to 17,000, 2,000 is quite low. It was also interesting, Mr. Darga looked up some SEMCOG and MDOT data from at least 2014, pre-pandemic, when Solaronics was, in business running, and the traffic on those same streets was around 7,000 cars a day. So we need to not confrontationally, but politely point out that we're at a historic temporary low of traffic on Woodward and Ludlow, but that's not what the streets were designed for. And regardless of what happens with us and with our project, the Solaronics property will get occupied with something somewhere down the road. People will start going to work again. A variety of things will happen, and your historic low traffic is only temporary. Again, nothing to do with us, but we felt the need to point that out. Regarding Solaronics history, we happen to have the Rushes. Robert, I don't know if you'd want to come up and maybe from there, I don't know, would he be able to speak from there since this isn't? No, come up over here. All right, Robert, sorry, you got to speak into the mic. This is Robert Rush. His dad's with him. And they've, how long have you operated there? And these are photos of your parking lot, essentially.
Yeah, we started production there in the 70s when my grandfather bought the building. A typical production day July 2018, when we moved, would have been about 50 cars a day. Production schedule had been two different ways throughout the years. One was 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and the other was 7 to 3:30. Production is the majority of our employees, so you would get at that 6 a.m. or 4:30 p.m., you would get about 30, 35 cars leaving at the same time. Our office was probably 15, 18 people. They would go out sort of sporadically for lunch. And the big thing is we still average about 16, 18 semi-trucks a day. So in the morning, we get a third of those, and then in the afternoon, we get 2/3 of it. We get most of the semi-truck traffic around 4:30 because we're done producing it and we need to ship it out. And then once in a while, we did do a second shift for our press room, and that would range from 5 to 10 people and would run at the end of the first shift, so 4:30 to about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. So that was a typical day pre-July 18, before we moved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you lost your seat. Present day, the intersection around the bend, everyone knows the Dillman-Upton operation, again with a lot of commercial traffic. There's some smaller commercial traffic to the east, the DPW yard, and most of the neighbors and the commission knows generally what present day situation is. We wanted to try to melt the essence of what we learned from Mr. Darga's report into a summary that Woodward and Ludlow are collector streets. They're not side streets. Traffic volumes are artificially low. Our projected traffic volume from the report, and which is based on national standards, will be about 20 cars every hour, which is about a car every 2 or 3 minutes, which is very modest and sporadic, as opposed to Mr. Rush mentioned the shift comes out and there's 30 or 40 cars all hitting the street within a 5 to 15 minute period. Overall traffic generated from multiple uses, for example, if this were to become an industrial campus of 5 or 6 businesses, it's highly, and that's also basically what the report was based on, the scenario, and it's a very realistic scenario, could very easily produce more traffic, certainly daytime traffic, than what our condo project is proposing. The report finds that the traffic increase on Ludlow will be around 1% gain, which is considered insignificant by engineering standards. The property will not remain vacant. Someone's going to occupy it doing something, unless some benefactor buys it and turns it into a park. But we haven't heard that that's an option. We're just here to present our vision. And we've committed to having the signalized crosswalk to improve safety in the area. So the results of the facts that we understand from the report and from our study of the area is that the traffic proposed by a project absolutely is going to go up, but that's because it's a vacant piece of property. But even at that, again, the official report shows that it's being categorized as negligible or insufficient or insignificant. And just to give a couple visuals, there's this wonderful modeling software that Giffords Webster has, and we've got just a few at the major intersections. This is PM, the industrial site. On the right is a condo, our condo, and these little dots coming and going are actually from the the report, they took readings on actual traffic conditions, and then the modeling, it's all available. They didn't just make up a bunch of dots to try to impress you or not impress you. This is data-driven. It's a very expensive software package. And we hired Givels Webster to give us a visual. And what you'll see here as a theme is is that the industrial population produces, now these are little 20-second snippets. So to be fair and transparent, in between shifts at the industrial facility, there'd be zero traffic. But when traffic does exist, it'll come in waves like this, as opposed to the condo traffic is going to be sporadic and you know, no one goes to work or comes home at the same time, and there is a lot of people working from home. So there's a theme here. We didn't make this stuff up. It is all data driven. Just a couple more, but I'll show you Main Street here. This is morning, a typical morning hour. And Mike, what is morning? What's your definition of morning?
An area like this, 7 to 9 a.m.
Yeah, okay. Just a couple more here. But the theme is clear. Here's the Woodward Main Street. Again, industrial on the left. Condo, and not just any condo, our 106-unit condo. Mixed in with the residential, the existing population as defined by the counts that Givels Webster physically took about 3-4 months ago. And the last one is here, afternoon, Woodward Main Street. Again, visually the same, and to be fair, this is at peak areas of the day for the industrial, but that will happen at least 4 and maybe 6 times a day if you know, at least that's what would most likely happen in that setting. So, Mike, if you could come up. Michael Darga is just going to summarize this language is in his report.
Sure. So the 3.acre site, the 704 Woodward, looking at the rezoning with the low-rise multifamily residential, looking at about 435 one-way trips a day. I point out one-way trips. This is not 435. This is in and out of the site. So think of this as, you know, one trip. If you left your house coming in and out, that would be 2 vehicle trips as far as something like this is concerned. So this would be more like, you know, 218 cars coming in and out of the site every day, not 400. And for 100 and some units, that's everybody taking, you know, 2-3 trips a day in and out, going to and from work. 33 trips in the AM peak. So again, that's in that 7 to 9 AM hour roughly. 8 coming in, 25 exiting. Normal conditions, people going to work. 40 in the PM peak hour, which is your 4 to 6 PM type hour. Kind of just the opposite, 24 coming in, 16 exiting. Contrast, we looked at this at various, the industrial zonings. The current previous use was not too dissimilar from the residential use, but the potential use could be up to 2.5 times what the residential is. So that's that industrial campus, where mixed uses being in there to the full 60,000 square feet or so, but of different uses, could produce, you know, 2.5 times a much more large turnover of vehicles from either restaurants or different type of service industries coming in there. Existing traffic patterns passing in the site eastbound in the PM is more than twice as great as westbound. Continuing on, the volume of driveways and other parking related, relatively small, like I said, that 1%. It is a fairly negligible impact on the drive there in this developed, more mature area. We did have where the entering drive should be located directly opposite to Dillon Upton Drive, so that just reduces that amount of conflict there, and the driveways line up, so traffic coming in and out of both sites knows where they're supposed to be. And we did propose a couple improvements.
The driveway itself is fine coming out opposite Dillon Upton, but just looking to improve that sight distance access back around the curve so that nobody's being blindsided coming around the curve. And then if we remove the second western drive from the site, that gives us room to improve that sight distance and safety coming along the Paint Creek Trail. So, I mean, the net finding, the RM2 with the limited number of units is, again, a negligible traffic impact out there and would be a pretty compatible use for the area here.
Thank you. Paint Creek Trail enhancements, I'm going to let Reed, our representative from Stonefield Engineers, speak to all the wonderful civilly things he's going to do.
I am, again, Reed Cooksey with Stonefield Engineering Design, doing the site work here. So one of the big factors with this development is working with Paint Creek Trail and kind of trying to provide not just an amenity for the residents, but for the community as well. You know, we know this is kind of a jewel of, you know, the residents here, and safety is paramount. So one of the big factors we wanted to bring in was this signalized pedestrian walk. It's currently a crosswalk, but doesn't have the markings, and, you know, putting these, it is a bend in the road here, so putting a signalized light where when pedestrians are standing there, it'll start flashing to show cars and traffic they need to stop and let the pedestrians cross is an amenity that was not just important to Paint Creek Trail, but also to the developers. The next item here, you know, as an amenity, you know, there's a nice vegetation that we talked about. We looked at the aerials between the existing industrial building and the trail itself and all around the trail. With our development, you know, we will have a substantial amount of green space, but in taking down the existing building, some of the existing gravel drive and things on site, we will be impacting some of the trees. So I know that in the previous application for Kruk, the screening was a huge issue. We want to nip that in the bud early. We're proposing 53 evergreen trees right along the right over the property line along the trail to provide screening from our building to the trails. That those trees will be a mix of green giants as well as red cedars to provide a nice mix of trees and not just look like a uniform wall. Then behind that, we also are proposing an additional 12 deciduous trees to go along with the 10 existing deciduous trees that'll be there. So there'll be a substantial amount of break between the view shed between Paint Creek and the actual building itself on the other side. So you won't lose any of that existing greenery as well as dense foliage that's already there. And lastly, one of the more important pieces, the current site does have a licensed area that's off-site that is part of Paint Creek Trail. This currently is being used as a gravel access drive. One of the big proponents here is to void this deal and give it back to Paint Creek Trail to widen up their access here. And this is part of the area that we will be planting with those evergreen trees as well as some deciduous trees to provide that buffer all the way down to the road right away and not just kind of where the trailhead starts by the creek.
What is that, an artifact from the railroad days? Is that kind of what?
No, the Russians needed that for turning around space for the semis, is that correct? So they negotiated, what year was that, in the 90s?
With the railroad?
With the Paint Creek Trail.
It was after the railroad?
No, yeah, no, it was with the trail.
Got it.
Yeah, not that long ago, and it has a 25-year term. I mean,
Okay.
it's a matter of public record. It's a
Thank you.
license. It's not an easement, it's a license. So now we get on to the soil. And again, we happen to know and have worked with one of the preeminent environmental firms in the region, PM Environmental. You can see all their accolades and the locations throughout the country. And we happen to have their CEO here, who's going to give you a snapshot. There he is in the flesh. Michael, come on up.
Thank you. I liked it better when it was warm out and I could wear a golf shirt, but fall's upon us. So I don't have any cool graphics that look like Frogger, if anyone remembers the video game. I just thought of that looking at all the cars going. But all we have done is a phase one at this point, which looked at a lot of the historical documents that I think Nick referenced. What was the word used, Nick? It's not terribly contaminated. I concur with that. I mean, given the history of this site, manufacturing since 39, I show a building was there in an aerial photo in 37. We don't know if it was built in 30 or 28. So given the long-term history of this site, there is data that shows some low-level residual solvent impact. There was also a dry cleaner to the east. We haven't done any work to really try to differentiate what the source of this is. Solaronics has been there for 50 years, but this property's been in use probably in excess of another 40 years prior to that. So once we know that there is a final plan approval and where the final buildings and foundations will be located, we have plans to do additional assessment to characterize the soil so that when the plant is demolished, we abandon all of the utilities, anything that could be storing any type of fluids from historic operations. There's the potential that there could be some orphan underground storage tanks here, probably fuel oil to heat the building back in the day. If we do find those, we would have those properly abandoned, cleaned, and removed and disposed of accordance. We'd do all sampling in accordance with all of Eagle's requirements, which used to be MDEQ, which used to be DNR. So that's our regulatory state agency. That's the EPA to the state at the federal level. So once we have that, we would develop a soil and management plan. You can't read all these bullets, but this is the type of stuff we typically do on these redevelopment projects once we know what the final plan is. Can include a number of, and likely will include, source removal, engineering controls. That lower photo on the right's a engineered vapor barrier. All these things will be looked at and evaluated to be protective of sensitive receptors, including the occupants of the buildings and the Paint Creek. And I think that really sums it up. I wish I could provide more. It's all pending on a final plan when we can really dig in and come up with a solution here.
Nick, is this going to be an environmental remediation request? Is there going to be a?
It's up to them.
But it's possible.
It's possible. It could be a brownfield.
Okay. Everyone understands that's a brownfield redevelopment program that would allow them to apply for essentially tax credits to clean it up.
I'm good.
Yeah. With a couple clarifications, our intent with this application, again, this is an introduction, a discussion, is that scope-wise, we believe we could move forward without requesting brownfield assistance.
And absorb it yourself.
Yes. So that's our current position. The significant takeaway that I have on the environmental is that to make land able to live on, residential grade, it requires a significant amount of actions that aren't fully defined yet. But to move our project forward, that's what's going to happen, and that's what will happen with our project.
Thank you.
And now, after all that technical stuff, now we get to the eye candy, the building design. Now, this is the current proposed site plan. And essentially, we have a V-shaped building with a courtyard in the center that sort of faces the north to the creek. And then each one of those wings would have a single corridor. Well, you'll see the floor plans in a minute. Down here at grade level is all of our parking and our entry lobby, the Amazon room for packages, maybe the fitness center. At grade, we'll have some fire pits, and it'll just be a wonderful courtyard setting. And the intent is that the majority of parking be indoors. We believe our residents in a luxury development would expect that, and we know they'd enjoy that. As far as the floor plans, this is plans 2, 3, and 4, where we have the center-loaded corridors, the elevators sort of at where the two wings meet, and 30-some units per floor, up to the total of 106. There are presently no units called for at the grade level. One sensitivity that we, understand is the building height. 2.5 stories is what's in RM1 around us. There's also, other than RM2 or a central business district. There's no real district that has anything above 2.5 stories. So we can't survive that financially. So this is our best guess. The great news about this site, as was on slide 1, is that we're literally nestled into the trees. The tree line, we had a drone, and we measured the tree line to be 60 to 70 feet to the tops of the trees. And so for a 50-foot high building, or even right next to the trees, you really wouldn't see it. You come back with some of these sight lines, and you'll authentically never, this will be one of the most beautiful buildings you'll never see, we believe. We're proud of the design. Here's some accurate Photoshop renderings of taking the elevations of the building and setting them in. One's looking from the north over the DPW yard. That's a drone shot. If we were down at grade, it would even be more dramatic. The other to the right is over on the east side of Woodward by the ball yard there. And again, that's where you presently would see the bulk of the building, which is on the industrial side and the DPW side. We will be putting landscaping there, more consistent with this, where the building is literally going to be surrounded by lush, tall trees. And here's a couple images driving around the bend and or walking up the trail. Image on the lower left is actually exaggerated. There is actually a tree there. The architects did a brutally accurate rendering, and you literally couldn't see the building at all. I thought that was a little extreme, so I had them remove the one tree so you could get a peekaboo view. So we know that the neighbors are here. We know we're aware of their petition. We're aware of some of their concerns, at least the ones we've seen online and the ones we've heard about. And we authentically try to work with everyone. And so this is what we've tried to do, at least for our discussion, on the 4 topics that we heard recurring in that petition. First and foremost is traffic. The big issue on traffic is that the neighbors are correct. Our project's going to add traffic, no doubt about it. But to compare it to a vacant site is not fair to anybody, and we just want to politely point that out. Second is the building height, and we feel real good about all those trees that are around us, and the architecture of our building, this modern mountain. Matter of fact, I forgot to. Do you have the samples ready? We have Monica here, the chief designer of the building. I'll have her pull out part of this mountain modern design is use of rich natural stone and wood or wood look materials. Some of them being this and stone and rich use of glass and floor to ceiling glass in certain areas. Just frankly, as an architect, I'm jealous because I could never design anything this nice. But we think it's just drop dead gorgeous. We saw some comments being concerned about property values, and just to be honest, we're a little curious about that. If I owned a home in this neighborhood and I were close to a abandoned, contaminated industrial building versus a gorgeous new tens of millions of dollars of investment, I would think our building will add value to the neighbors, not decrease the value. And if they think it's going to decrease because of traffic, again, it's an artificial low at the moment. It's not going to stay that way regardless of us. And there was some information in there about school impact. We we think we're gonna get empty nesters. We have 1 and 2 bedroom units. We won't have any 3-bedroom units. We'll certainly, sell, to anybody, but we don't see any school-age population, living in our community. So here we have, an exciting opportunity. Len and Robert, if you'd want to come up and just kind of, so this is the last slide, just summarize why we're here and what we're hoping for.
So I'm Len Nadolski, the principal of Champion Development. Doug, thank you. Very good. And Nick, thank you for all the guidance you've given us kind of going through this. Anytime there's change to a neighborhood, it becomes contentious at times, but we're very sensitive in listening and taking that input and putting it into our projects. We're very successful. We've done 30 projects of this nature all across the United States, and have taken some blighted sites and made them really, really nice. And people are real proud of that, and so are we. So we kind of take a look at this as to bring a much-needed luxury condominium living to Rochester. We did our homework. We do studies and have done a complete market study on this market and what the need for this type of product is, and it's showing. A lot of empty nesters want to kind of downsize a little bit, and a lot of snowbirds going back and forth look for this type of product. In our past products of this nature, we're 95% sold out. We do with the higher amenities inside, and there's a big need. Little bit, as he says, it will upgrade a blighted industrial site. The reason we put the parking underneath is so we don't have to dig out a lot of soils, because there would be no residential on that bottom level. So that allows us to reduce the costs for the site. However, it is also nice to have indoor parking for your residents, because they look for that feature for safety. It's a big deal. You don't go to your car to have your feet get full of snow. You're out of all the elements. You come to your elevator and go right to your vehicle. It'll bring a lot of revenue to the city. Our tax base on this project and our forecast is going to increase about 400%, which I know you're all faced with budgets to deal with salaries to deal with. This project alone will, like I say, 400% to 500% of currently what type of revenue that's bringing for there. The architectural design, Modern Mountain, really will fit into where that hill is, the Dinosaur Hill, where the trail is. And our idea was to aesthetically make it fit what Rochester really has a feel for. And in turn, put some upgraded exterior elements. So when you go by on the trail, if you can see through the trees, you're going to see a very nice site. In addition, meeting with the Trailhead Commission, there's a fence there now that they want to have down. And by doing what we're going to do, it's going to give us some security with the way we put the trees, but it won't have a fence there that they're going to be looking at. That was really important to them. We have a perfectly buffered location for high-density residential. As Doug pointed out earlier, we're pretty far away from a lot of the residents. That's why this site appealed to us, is because it's further away. And it's funny because we go to a lot of sites when we do some other type of development, we're taking a heavy industrial site and trying to put it into residential, which is a real de-zoning. It's actually a downgrade, where we're usually sometimes taking a site and trying to upgrade it. This is a little different for us because it's usually the other way. Additional traffic is honestly insignificant. It's about 1%. That's why when we first came and talked to Nick, that traffic was a concern. Immediately, we put the survey in to say, okay, maybe they're right. Let's take a look at this. Let's really take a look at what's going to happen and what those roads are made for, and do a traffic study. Not to mention, I will say, in 2 of our other projects of this nature, 25% are not occupied to 30 in the winter months at all. They're snowbirds that go back and forth. Upgrade the environmental conditions, that's a concern. That site sits the way that it is right now as an environmental concern, and we would really want to look at cleaning that up. To do it right, And that's the right thing to do with it. We're used to doing that, done a lot of work with PM on other sites that had multiple tanks in the ground, and we cleaned them up and brought them all the way up to standards. Used to working with Eagle. This is not something that's new to us. It'll bring improvements to the trail. The whole idea is to use the trail as a recreational facility for our guests and our people that bought in there. To use that as a part of the environment and encompass it all together. So that's a real important factor, and that's why this site had an appeal to us. It is next to the city functions, which is a little tougher. We're kind of facing some of the better, the windows toward the units, toward the trail and toward the hill, but that is a little something to deal with, and the way we're doing our designs to not encompass that is important to us as well, to give value to the customers that buy these. So that's that piece. I'd like to bring.
Well, Mr. Rush has a final clarification on where they're at.
Well, I know the petition has been brought up a couple times that's online, and there was a couple mentions of green space or community space, and I just want to clear the air and said that we've never been approached for a purchase agreement involving a green space or a community space. We have had numerous proposals over the last 3 to 4 years, and we have turned down quite a few. I know Nick has seen quite a few, but some didn't even make it here because we didn't think it was going to be a good fit for the community. We thought by moving our production out of Rochester was the best thing for the community, so somebody like this group could come in and develop it into something worthwhile and really live up to the Rochester name instead of our building, because it doesn't. They put a lot of time and resources into this proposal, and the architecture and the environmental. They've come to our offices and they've met us in person. We've talked about the project. They're very serious about it, and the most serious proposal we've had to date. And the big thing is, I guess, there's been a rumor that, or a speculation that the building will remain vacant if for some reason this falls through. And it's been vacant for 4 years because of different purchase agreements and having the due diligence periods and having to wait. But we really financially can't afford to keep the building vacant anymore. So we are going to have to look at industrial leases for warehouses or distribution centers. Or the other option is to move a portion of our company back into the building. We were going to put an addition on our current facility because we've outgrown it in 4 years. But depending on the outcome of this, we might have to move a portion of it back. It may not look like it from the outside, but the inside is still has the air compressors, all the electrical to move machines back in and start working again. So that's a real opportunity or a real thing that could happen. I know everybody's got their opinion on what can go in the space, but I just hope the city, community, everybody can come together and realize that this is a really good opportunity for a very nice property, nice building.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's our presentation for discussion.
Okay, just to move this along, I'm going to ask the commissioners first if you have questions or comments for the petitioners.
I have a few comments, Mr. Chairman.
David.
First of all, I'd like to say it's kind of exciting the way the presentations come together. It was kind of long awaited to see something back in front of us on this. And I'm really glad to see that it was condominium ownership versus apartment, and kind of put it into an analogy of the traffic has been a big topic, or at least tonight, and a little bit of that conversation is about the in and out of vehicles. Back to the condo versus apartments. I think the turnover of cars is one thing, but the turnover of occupant in a owned piece of property versus an apartment is a big thing. We've seen a lot of, over my years on the commission, a lot of different apartments And I think there's more to come, and I'm glad to see that this isn't going that route or isn't proposed that route, so that was a plus in my mind. A couple things just for food for thought. I know where this is just an introduction, but things that are on my mind and some of it's perception. And maybe there's already answers, but in this stage, they're not yet on paper. The plan shows a building that's encroaching on setbacks, and what I've heard from the conditions, that wasn't mentioned. It was just a reduced height generally, but other things, somehow that setback thing would have to be addressed in future.
Could I clarify that? It's up to you.
Yeah, go on. It's okay
So
with me, Mr.
RM2
Chairman.
calls for 50 foot or the height of the building. Other than one little corner of the building, we are honoring 50 feet setbacks to the building all around.
So maybe that just gets clarified in conditions, or like you just did, an explanation. On the plan right now, it looks like there's something else that's not yet right. And I think there's something also relative to setback, not just by feet, but by distance to the water's edge. I'm not certain about that, but I believe there's something else besides property line that you need to look at
We are aware
for
of
setback. Okay. One thing other about the building and its placement, along the trail, it's right at the setback, if I'm not mistaken. Or there's a little wiggly line that looks like the setback where the building is on a straight plane and the setback isn't. One thing that's really nice about the trail right there is that east morning sun filters through those trees, and it's just part of that experience. And I think that I would be concerned that that building in some situations of morning is going to block that filtering of sun. That will be a loss. There's other maybe good pluses, but I just wanted to point out there is something about the building being where you're showing it that would be a negative from a natural setting standpoint. Parking in general, I see there's spaces designated at 9 and 18 feet under the building in a garage-like. That's a very tight maneuvering, and it makes me think it's really jammed in. And there's about 15 spaces to the trail side that I don't think are necessary. That's my opinion, but it dents the naturalness of here's a building edge, and then there's all this green stuff up to the trail, and it's interrupted, in my opinion, minorly by 15 spaces. Do away with the 15 spaces and keep that whole green belt between the building and the trail. I think would be a benefit, at least for consideration. And then there's tandem parking. Again, it kind of goes back to just the maneuvering. I don't know how you do that in a garage with a single aisle when the inbound car needs to get out. It's a hassle for one, but I think there's this physical challenges to that. You probably know the answer to it, but on paper, it looks like a problem to me.
Could we speak to that?
Go right ahead.
We have a property we just did. Obviously, the tandem spaces would be purely assigned to two-bedroom units, where they would both be assigned to a single unit. You're not going to have to call your neighbor to have them move their car. And while there's some pushback, they would rather, our residents would rather be in the covered area and deal with the, honey, are you going to park first night or am I? Than have one outdoors or whatever. And
So
there's
it
not
sounds-
enough room, even under, for everyone to have a single pull-in space.
Gotcha. So a family negotiation kind of thing. I get it. I figured it was an explanation like that. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we've actually are managing that circumstance now, and it's not ideal, but it's not horrible, it's accepted.
I have two last comments. One, it's more perception. So traffic is a big conversation about this, covered well tonight. It's 106 units being added to this. It's been described as insignificant. Maybe it is, 1% is not that much of anything. And that we're measuring it against a temporary low. But just as perspective, between Main Street and University along Woodward and Ludlow, there's 86 residential units, 86 driveways, compared to an added 106. Is that a big deal? When you look at it as 1%, it's not. But perception, you're adding 20 more households in one driveway versus 86 driveways spread out over almost a mile or a quarter mile, whatever that distance is. It's just a perception thing. I don't know how you overcome that other than you've already described it as insignificant 1% or temporary low.
Well, if I could, the 86 houses, we understand, but as a collector road, which is connected to 2 or 3 side streets, it's more than 86 houses that are feeding traffic on Ludlow and Woodward now, today. There's probably a few hundred homes, depending on how people travel to get to Maine or University. And so we feel perception that it's equally kind of distorted to just say, oh, you're doubling or tripling the population with this one property. The collector streets don't serve that way, so that's how we.
I get it. I didn't have time to count all the other ones, to tell you the truth. And I'm not saying it as a bad thing. I'm just giving you a perspective of, there's a lot coming out of one driveway compared to everything else. And the last thing it's described as luxury. And I'll go back to my very first comment. I was glad to see it's condominiums versus apartments for that turnaround aspect. But what is luxury? And what is the range that you're seeing as cost here? And maybe it could help defend or explain that thing about decreasing home values around there. Is this going to elevate property values just because these are more expensive than what else is in the marketplace right now?
So luxury for us is a blend of quality, amenities, and on the financial side, these condos will probably be in the range of some of the higher-end single-family homes in the area because of all that they offer. We don't see any $1 million condos. There are $1 million houses in the area. But they're not $250,000 or $300,000 condos either. You know, the market looks like they would support enough value to warrant the construction that we're contemplating. That's, without trying to define numbers today, that's, I guess, our definition of luxury.
And I really wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was just trying to understand what you mean by luxury. It's to combat the comment about it could decrease other property values.
We have quartz countertops, nice trim, nice solid doors, Schlag hardware, those kinds of things, stainless steel appliances. There are a number of products in the region that are similar and will be towards the top. We're not going to be the Royal Park either, right? The $1 million stuff, but we're going to be very, very nicely appointed and finished.
I kind of got that idea based on the presentation and the level of information, that you're not trying to skimp out on things here. I just, again, wanted to understand what luxury is. One final comment. I know you're in your first steps before us, but you're putting a lot into it. I didn't see anything barrier-free wise indicated on the plans at this point, and it will be something that will be important to make sure it's covered well.
Oh, yes. No, it'll be fully compliant with all ADA. We'll have a number of ADA units. There's by law, there's a certain, out of 106, so many of them will have to be ADA accessible, showers, that sort of thing. Also, as far as parking, there'll be designated parking for, ADA
And that's
spaces.
really more what I was referring to. Generally, we won't look inside, other than just for information. We won't have any real say
we'll
about those
volunteer
sorts
that.
of things.
Yeah, no, we have to do that to get the building permit anyhow.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very
Thank
much.
Other
One last
questions
comment.
or
I'll
comments?
end with the idea that condominiums, in my mind, is better than apartments.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Christian?
Sure. This was a very good presentation, and as everyone here may or may not know, this is really the fourth or fifth time that someone has come up to us and presented a potential use for this building. And first of all, this is the most well-attended. I wish everyone was here every planning commission meeting. It would be wonderful. But two is I want to represent that they really did do a very thorough job. But in my questions, I don't want to thank anyone as I'm directing or telegraphing or showing my cards, but I have a question about construction. What would, obviously there's a lot of talk about traffic and impact and disruption for when you're here, if you're here, but I'm more concerned frankly of the process and the timing and how long do you expect or would you expect to impact the adjacent neighbors if this were to go forward? And that's what I'm really curious about.
Yeah, I don't know, would you want to stab at that at all?
I would think it'd be a 12-month plus or minus.
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Yeah. My name's Frank Rewalt.
Hi,
I would
Mike.
say it would be 12 months plus or minus, probably 50 to 70 tradesmen on site, tradeswomen at a time in peak.
I think one of the beauties of this site is because we're not going to be paving and occupying around the building. There's lots of staging area. We just completed a zero lot line building where we had to rope off sidewalks and alleyways and everything in another city, and now that was a challenge. But this site is really quite roomy to support construction, and we're not going 8 stories, right? So there should be a good opportunity to be good neighbors during the construction process and have room.
Another question, and I know my colleagues will probably fill in a lot of gaps that I'm likely not going to cover here, but with respect to the crosswalk between the 2 streets there, I would want to see something much more robust than what was delivered. And I get it, this is very, very early on in preliminary, but as we've discussed before, it's a high traffic area, and people who use the trail, I mean, candidly, now it needs to have something. But that being said, if this is going to be part of your proposal, part of your development, then I would want to see something much
Yeah,
more.
we'd be glad to work with the city engineer, and, come up with recommendations. The scope-wise, it's really up to the city.
I get it, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all I've got, Mr. McGee.
Rich?
I have a couple of questions. A follow-up on the crosswalk. It appears as if the development will provide the lighting and the striping initially, but is that going to be then turned over to the city for maintenance?
I think it would be for discussion, but I would assume that would be the case. I don't know if that would end up as a maintenance item for us.
And then secondly, in regards to landscaping, we've talked earlier in the previous development about the plantings. I always have a concern there because I've been dealing with some issues 20 years after the fact. Everybody wants instant landscaping, everybody wants a barrier, but 20 years from now, if you're planting all those evergreens, they're probably going to start to die because they're going to be grown too close together. Any long-term plans?
We would be committed to maintain the visual separation that we're proposing. And frankly, the way a condo works, you've got an association. You put budget money you pay your condo dues, right, every month. Part of that's gonna go to a landscaping fund to replace the dead trees or whatever. So that would be addressed just by the course of how a condo operates so that you don't end up with a reduced density of wonderful landscaping. The residents would want that for privacy anyhow.
Good.
Did it? Eric? Well, first, I think it's a very nice presentation that you guys put together. I know it's a lot of work to get to this point. You guys have made an investment already, which is nice to see the professionalism there, so that's great. I think the biggest issue I have in my mind that I'm trying to work out is the connection to the master plan and the fact that we're really master plan being a guiding document for the community with input from the community. We've arrived at, the RT, future land use, which is, 2.5-story building there. So it's the massing that's giving me pause, more so than the traffic. Not that the traffic's insignificant, but I get the fact that something is gonna go there, something's gonna generate traffic. I don't think that road is a crazy burden right now from a traffic perspective. There's some points of interest, but for me, it's more the massing. That's, the 4-story is a little concerning for me. I guess question for the fire chief relative to access to that building. Curious about if that's an issue or not.
Thanks for the question. The good news is we had an opportunity to review the site plan, and we've looked at it. The biggest thing that we look at when we start building residential or multifamily is fire suppression, and the building will be fully suppressed. If you go take a look at NFPA's guidelines, fires in residential buildings that are suppressed are typically contained with either 1 or 2 sprinkler heads. And so from a fire protection activity, we don't have any issue. The parking that they provided on the outside gives us the ability to get our aerial devices up to the building and to be able to get to the upper floors. So we would have no problem with that. The key, though, is the suppression in the facility.
Chief, do you need a second exit, even if it's just an emergency one?
Secondary exits, if you take a look at them, have been put in town in several areas. If you take a look at Jacobs Way and Green Circle, you'll see some dead grass with some plastic pieces. The same thing if you go north on Letica. I'll be honest with you, I would never use those. Because of the time that would take to those are breakable posts to break them out. And as long as I can get down the street, I can always back out. I don't need to drive forward.
So you don't need to get to the back of this building?
In this case here, I have access on both the, I'll call them the east and the west.
All the way to the back?
All the way to the back, right? The only area that we don't have access is the center courtyard area, but that's pretty common in almost all of the apartment complexes we have in Great Oaks and that area. And again, the suppression is the key for this facility.
Thank you. Any other?
Just one last one here, if I.
Yes.
It's just the modern mountain theme. I'm curious what everyone thinks of the modern mountain theme. Although I think it's very nice, I'm not.
I would lose the term.
Yeah, I'm just not
Modern
sure.
mill.
Yeah. I'm not sure it's right or fits in perfectly with our surroundings.
If I could, we actually did, when we were meeting with Ms. Ford at the old mill, right, where the offices are, you know, that the timber, the glass.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do Rochester Mills, right, with the punch windows and the turn of the century, 2 centuries ago, brick, timber. And so it gravitated towards stone timber, but with a modern flair, with the more dramatic, you know, roof lines. They call it mountain modern, but it's still the essential materials that we see in mill history or mill design. And that actually did guide us to do a spin on using mill materials in a more modern way. And we can ditch the name.
Perhaps you want to work on that a little.
Yeah, we'll ditch the name.
One last one, if I could. Relative to the building height versus the setback, if this was an RM, and this is probably a video question, but if this was RM2 zoning, what would the setbacks be based on the building height it would be 50? Based on this proposed building? Okay.
So it
Minimum
meets it
50
except for
feet.
one particular area.
Yeah, because of the shape of the site.
It would be 50, okay.
Would that need a variance? Or it could be approved in the site plan?
We'd probably make it a condition.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
Oh, we're gonna,
Yeah, we are. Okay. Do you have anything at this point?
I don't have a question, I have comments after.
Okay. Thank you. Great presentation, and we appreciate
By the way,
appreciate the.
Regardless, we're really excited to be here. We're very excited about the property, and we'd love to do a great job for you.
Okay. Let's hear from the community. If you want to speak, why don't you come on over, and we need your name and address. And, you know, let's be polite and get some information out.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Bernetta Burston, and I live just off of Woodward. And my concern,
Your address.
my question, the address?
Yeah.
322 Drace.
Thank you.
My question is about the crosswalk lighting that they were talking about. Because I am there lots of times, are the lighting there I don't understand how it's gonna work. Are you telling me if I wanna walk across the road and I'm on the trail, I push a button and the light goes on and the traffic stops? Because if that's the case, you might as well put in a regular traffic light. But that's my question. I don't understand quite how this crosswalk's supposed to work.
Our plan is to work again with city engineering. It could be a motion sensor activated, it could be a manual button, a combination of both. But the mission is if a bike or a person wants to cross the street, they're gonna get some blinking yellow lights
But
to
not
help them
red.
with that. What's that?
Not red lights like you see in
If
Ann
the-
Arbor?
If the city wants
or-
red lights, we'll do red lights, but I think
or
that would add more
CST or
confusion
whatever. They're
to
they're
the.
red.
Who gets the yellow lights? The walkers or the cars?
Oh, the cars,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, to be determined. Yes, sir.
Yes, hi, my name is Eric Reese. I live at 757 Ludlow.
Hi, Eric.
So, hello. So as you can imagine, this directly impacts many members on our street, okay? Both Ludlow, Woodward, and the rest of the downtown community. And I have to say that I feel like some people are being a little disingenuous here and sort of talking about the perception. There's a lot of perception of traffic, perception this, perception that. I'm an engineer and I work on data, but I'll tell you that perception's reality. And everybody here, okay, has a vested interest in what's going on in this community. And I would imagine that most of these people feel very strongly about this future development. And I would have to say that many people here probably they're probably not positive about what the direction is with this proposed building, okay? The master plan that was put together was done with a lot of thought, I'm sure. And a lot of eyes looked at it. And it was determined that any future use would be RT and zoned as RT. Why was that done that way? Okay? I understand right now it's industrial, and it's in the Rush's interest to get this property sold. Okay? Either they bought a liability or they turned that property into a liability, which makes it difficult to make to make this financially viable. You have to put in a number of units to make that happen, okay? If I allow my house to become dilapidated, I will not get a premium price for my property. It's just the way it is, okay? So, in addition, when it comes to RM2, the future zoning is 14 to 16 units per acre, okay? This is 106. This should be maxed out at 62. So I'm not quite sure how this is being allowed to go up to 106 units. But I was just walking down the trail with my wife today, and I thought, what a beautiful trail this is, and what a beautiful area, and what a beautiful place this is to live. This isn't Royal Oak, okay? I moved here for very specific reasons, and I've lived here for 20 years. I love this community, and I love this town, and I want it to stay that way. Putting a 4-story property in that location is going to significantly impact the view of not only from the trail, but if you're going down the street and the whole streetscape. And if traffic was an issue, why are we putting in or even contemplating putting in crossing signs? I mean, we don't have crossing signs there now, right? So why are we contemplating that? There's no doubt, okay, that going from 86 houses to 106 units is not going to provide a significant impact to the community. Now, when we talk about taxes, right, we talk about tax revenue. There is a whole, on the south side of the city, I believe there are RM2 developments proposed, right, for additional tax revenue, and that's a great place to have those types of projects, okay, down off of Mill Street, that whole area down there, perfect. And bringing projects to this community is not always contentious. I don't remember anybody really here in this room having a problem with the Roxy project. It's great. Nobody really had any objections. There was a couple of people, but most everybody here is here because of this particular development. So this should show everybody here on the Planning Commission in the city that this means a lot to this community. I would hope, and I would ask that everybody takes this under advisement, because I want Rochester to remain the way that it is. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that we can't have a future development there. It's R2, or excuse me, it's zone future is RT. Great, no problem. If you want to continue industrial operations, fine, okay? But to put a monstrosity of a building in that location is not going to fit with the character. And I hear the word character very often here, spoken about the downtown area. This is not going to fit with the character of the streetscape of Ludlow and Woodward. So I want to thank everybody for listening to me, and I really appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your thoughts. I can speak here for the Planning Commission. I mean, you saw us at work earlier on, and we put a lot of time and thought into these things, and we all live here. I don't know what the average, David's been on here as old as I am. I mean, how many years you been on the Planning Commission? 25, 30. And we feel deeply and passionately about the city, just like all of you do. This is not going to quickly slide through the approval process if it ever gets approved. We don't know that. I can assure you that we're going to take a lot of time, give a lot of thought, seek a lot of input, more than just this one meeting here, before any kind of a decision is ever made up here. Just so you know the process, the site plan itself, if it's done within the zoning, if it requires a rezoning that follows the master plan, it has to eventually go to the city council. So the Planning Commission here can approve site plans as long as zoning or conditions are not included. Otherwise, our job is to put a package together to present it to the city council, and they make the final say. So this is not going to just happen overnight. In any event, whether it comes or goes, it's not going to happen overnight. So I just want to give you assurance that we hear you loud and clear. We're going to consider everything that's put before us before any kind of a final decision is made. Eric, thanks for coming. I appreciate that very much. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jennifer Reese, and I also live at 757 Ludlow. Yes. But I have, so far the petition has 985 people that would like it to remain RT. And I would just like to give this to you. These are the names of all the people.
Okay, good.
And so that you have that, and there's a copy of.
This is online, is it?
It's online, but there are all the names and all of the people that do not want this to happen. I've lived on that street for 20 years. I guess I lived there when it was operating industrial and didn't even realize it. So go for it. Put your company back in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? I have a feeling that they have spoken for many of you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Vidya.
Just once the gentleman has spoken, there is somebody on Zoom, Mr. Cody Smith, who would like to speak. He's got his hand raised, so.
Corey, go right ahead.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
All right, so this is Cody Smith, 528 Ludlow Avenue. I've been a resident on Ludlow for 17 years, since 2005. First off, I understand the situation that the Planning Commission is in. They want to do what's best for the city, the citizens, and also the property and business owners. So I get it's a difficult balance. And obviously, this is a difficult site due to the quantity of proposals and obviously the attendance tonight. But I wanted to echo one thing that Eric just recently mentioned about character, and it meaning a lot to the Planning Commission. As he mentioned, he's been at some of the same meetings I have. We've seen seen the committee challenge quite a few proposals, specifically in the downtown area, because something didn't fit. More recently, the Dearborn Federal Credit Union was going to build, bright blue awnings and things, and you guys quickly shot it down because it just didn't fit. And I heard one of the Planning Commission members mention that already. Yeah, this modern mountain, whatever you want to call it, you can change the name, call it something different. It's still going to stick out like a sore thumb. it's a forested natural area and it's, you know, I get the closest house may be 500 feet away, but you still have to drive by 50 plus houses to get to this location. There's no other way to get there besides driving by all those houses. Chairman, I did want to, I guess, ask for some clarification. So I was doing a little bit of research, and I was at a meeting a few years ago where the Riverfront Place apartment and townhouse development was approved for First Street and Diversion Street. And I believe you were the chairman at that point, and you made a comment during that meeting of reminding the Planning Commission of their role. And your words at that time were you guys are the nuts and bolts people. And as long as the nuts and bolts all make sense, then it was City Council's job to do anything beyond that. And I just wanted to understand, you know, with your focus on character, how does character align with nuts and bolts? And maybe if you could clarify that statement.
I think that remains to be seen. This is the first presentation. There's a long way to go. And we'll just see how it unfolds.
Okay. I did have a question about the proposal, and I don't believe it was addressed tonight, but it says after construction and this thing is up and running, there's going to be 5 full-time employees, not including landscaping or maintenance. So I guess I was just looking for some clarification. Is that just for maintaining everything beyond landscaping and maintenance? Is this just for the residents? Is there going to be a business running out of this beyond the residents? And is that even allowed in an RM2 zoning?
Go ahead.
We don't know where you got those numbers. May be in the petition.
I read it right in the
not in our
proposal that was
submission.
submitted.
That's not your number, the 5.
No. We're gonna have some on-site management, but I don't know where those numbers came from.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, on page 79 of the Planning Commission package, employment opportunities. During design and construction, this project will require the support of hundreds of professionals and trades personnel over the next 2 years. Once occupied, there will be an on-site staff of around 5 persons full-time, plus additional contract resources for landscaping and maintenance needs.
I don't know what document you're looking at.
Page 79 of the Planning Commission package.
Right here,
I remember reading that.
the package. Right here.
The submittal package.
There will be on-site around 5 persons full-time.
Whose document is that?
Theirs.
Apparently, it's in a document.
If you don't mind, I'll read it to you. It says, once occupied, there will be an on-site staff of around 5 persons, full-time, plus additional contract resources for landscaping and maintenance.
But you're reading from your document.
This is
No, this
prepared.
is-
Your
This is
document,
your document.
It's in there.
Okay.
page 79.
Well, anyway.
The plan is probably 1.5 full-time people. And yes, we would hire landscape contractors as required.
I assume you have hallway people and elevators and things like that have to be cleaned and
Yeah, there'll be
common areas.
there'll be a manager and then a maintenance person, but neither of those, well, the maintenance person's probably full-time, but, and, it's
Okay,
not gonna be a
thank you.
large staff.
Cody, anything else?
Yeah, just a couple more points. Going back to the master plan, stating that, this specific location should be RT. But however, the master plan does recommend more higher density RM, but it specifically states, quote unquote, at the southern portion of the city. As Eric, I just want to echo what Eric said. Yeah, this would be great down at the southern portion of the city, but that's also where the Riverfront Place has been approved, and that's 144 unit that is yet to be built, 5 stories. So just put it right next to that one. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the Collector Street definition. Went up in front of City Council a few times in 2018 with a stop sign proposal for our street there, Ludlow. Long story short, I've been getting data from the chief of police monthly from the electronic speed signs. So, I mean, this isn't a traffic study, this is traffic data running 24/7, 365. So in August of this year, we had 111,536 cars traverse Ludlow, which on average is about 3,718 cars a day. Now, I also mentioned, or I heard that, we may be in a down slump. So I went back a few years in August of 2019, so right before the pandemic. Same month in August, we had 144,576 cars in that month, which is about 4,819 per day. So just comparing August 2019 to August 2022, we're down about 23% from, if you deem that normal. But I think the report stated, and I could be wrong on this, that we only get about 2,000 cars a day. So we're, somewhere about double that. And I also understand that, a collector street could handle up to 17,000 cars per day by definition. I mean, I don't think anybody in their right mind would think Ludlow can handle 17,000 cars a day. I mean, prior to the pandemic, I lived near the southern end, and there'd be a backup with the with the 4,000 cars we have already per day. 17,000 would be, a standstill. And I don't think that's what the city's going for either. I don't think the city wants to see anywhere near that. But at some point we gotta do what we can to curb that. Also, the traffic study continues to compare, and I guess use your words, comparable and potentially less than a new development of uses currently allowed on the site via existing I-1 zoning, which is essentially would be a 3-shift plant operation. I don't know what the probability of that is. I figured if that was probable, that'd be one of the proposals now. So I don't feel that that's an adequate thing to compare it against. And then the last item I wanted to bring up, and I guess is another question for the council, is there's rumors of there's potentially 4,000 units being proposed or in the works or being thought about throughout the city. I was just wondering how, I already mentioned the Riverfront Place, it's another 144 units. How does the existing proposals and potential and future proposals, how does that impact the Planning Commission's process or considerations?
We take them as they come forward, just like this. I don't know where that number came from. I've never heard of such an outlandish number. I can't in my wildest dreams figure out where that came from. But we, as an appointed commission, we take the projects as they're brought forward.
Okay. All right. Well, that was everything I had tonight. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Cody. Appreciate you calling very much. Anyone else in the room? Yes, sir.
Chris Rabb, I live at 124 Woodward. Been here 35 years, and I've never seen the rush hour that was described in my life, and that's just never materialized, where a bunch of people made a big jam up, and I live right at the corner house. But the actual reason I'm up here is just, Mr. Gasson made the point that he's glad that these are condominiums, but what, if anything, guarantees that they'll stay that way, that they can't be sublet, for instance, or rented out as units down the road, that kind of thing?
I don't know if anything can guarantee that. Once somebody owns a condominium, unless the condominium board documents control that, and some do, prevent long-term rentals or short-term rentals.
Well, wouldn't that diminish property values?
It may, but that's really up to these gentlemen here when they have their condominiums documents designed, whether or not sub-renting or subletting is approved. It's absolutely legal if the documents allow.
I know. All right, thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. You're hiding back there.
Yeah,
Hi.
Hi.
Sharon Witkowski. I'm at 309 Woodward. And I just want to thank all the other people, the other residents of Ludlow and Woodward that have spoken already. I totally agree with what they have offered here tonight. And this was the first time I have heard the term Collector Street. And I would say that Ludlow and Woodward are more than a collector street. It's a way to bypass going downtown, Main Street, to get around, and it's many times very past 25 miles an hour, which I'm sure our police commissioner can attest to that. That's fire, but I'm sure the police person can tell you that as well. So the traffic increase has already happened just from the fact that people cut through on Woodward and Ludlow. And the fact, if you put ever a light there at University and Ludlow, we might as well call it Ring Road in Birmingham, because that's what it will become. Every morning around 4:30, 5 o'clock, if I don't have my hearing plugs in, my ear plugs in, I wake up from the traffic noises. It's just something to consider.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Good evening.
Anonymio 511 University. I have a couple questions. I'm confused if they're condos or if they're, because are the people going to buy them and own them? Or are you guys going to continuously own them and just rent them out? Because you're going to have staff there, you're saying, permanently? And I don't know how you can say that, because the bylaws would control if there's permanent staff on site and if they would be subleased and stuff, unless you're going to permanently own them and just rent them out. So are people going to buy them, or are they going to be?
The plan is that people will buy them. Those other things you mentioned are really a function of the condominium documents that they put together.
Right, so we really don't know if that's going to happen.
We don't.
Okay, and the second thought that I had is right now we have our old Rochester Community Schools building open, and we're trying to decide what to do with that. So that could potentially be a lot of more traffic on University and cause more traffic on that street if we put more homes there or something like that. So it's something to consider.
These are all problems that come with reuse.
Correct.
And they have to be dealt with. They have to be talked through.
Right.
Yeah.
But we know that's going to be developed. Something's got to go there, right? That land can't just sit open. So something's going to go there, and I'm not going to think it's going to be some kind of a building or manufacturing.
That has to come through here eventually also.
Right. But take it into consideration, more traffic, please.
It's zoned single-family residential, I understand right now, so.
More traffic. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Vicki Smith. I live at 722 Elizabeth Street. And unlike most of the people in the room, I am not directly impacted because I'm not living on Ludlow and I don't, and I'm not on Woodward. But it was brought up earlier this evening that one thing that should be considered is the unintended consequences of increasing the traffic on Woodward and Ludlow. Excuse me, a little nervous. Right now, University and Main Street are gridlocked from 3:30 to about 6 o'clock. I can't imagine that 200 more cars in that little 5-mile square or less area is going to help with that. Living on Elizabeth, you wouldn't think that I'd be bothered, but I have sat in traffic jams trying to go from 2nd Street to Woodward, and it has taken me 45 minutes because of the traffic and the speed at which we go through the lights. Trying to get around that, you know, you are forced to go down into neighborhoods, and you are trying to get somewhere, and you're not always paying attention to kids and balls and whatever else is going on. So when you make these development decisions, try to tie them to what else is ongoing. We just talked about the former school admin building downtown, which feeds into university. It feeds into a residential area. You want to build something that's going to put 200 more cars on Woodward and Ludlow, what's that going to do to university? Please, as you're going through this, I know you're between a rock and a hard place, but you've got to not look at them as one project. Try to tie them together. If not for your ease, for those of us in the room that always have to wonder, oh my God, what's going to happen now? Because I live on the south end of Rochester, and I had to come for some of these discussions about can we build, will we build? Try to tie them together so that at least we know what the next plan is. I know that's hard. It's asking you to use a crystal ball, but it would certainly relieve our minds as the taxpayers of this community. I moved here in 2007, and I love the community. But it seems to me that in the attempt to attract people to Rochester and increase the tax base, you are giving away or selling the things that make Rochester unique. The green spaces, the walking, the community sense downtown. So as you're trying to look into the future, please keep that in mind, because we are here because we want to be, and I personally would hate to have to move because I've got no place to walk, or I continue to sit in traffic for 45 minutes when I'm just going down to 2nd Street. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I think that's where we end up for tonight. We're nowhere near ready to schedule this for a public hearing, so
But the first step would have to be go to a regular meeting to let Lydia do a full review, then schedule a public hearing. So I would suggest that we do that. They've submitted everything they need to do a rezoning.
When do you want to do that?
At the next available meeting. I mean,
So first meeting in December.
I don't know if we'll make that, but we have to look at their paperwork, make sure the rezoning first, I'm sorry. January at the worst, I would think, but we'll let everybody know.
Okay.
We need to make sure we have the paperwork for the rezoning first.
So we don't need any motion tonight?
No, because we would just schedule it if it was proper.
We'll just schedule it for the next meeting. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to make just a comment. Again, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I know you guys put in a lot of work. Also, thank you to all the people who came out, sent me personally emails and things like that. I think I've heard from everybody on Ludlow, Woodward. And I have to say to the lady who wakes up every morning that I apologize because I cut through there, but I like to think I go on the speed limit. But I go by there at 6:30, so I think it's.
So you're the one.
I'm the one. And I also ride my bike on the trail, so I know that corner, and that is a bad corner. But I just want to say, I think I echo Mr. Lord, where the traffic, I mean, you know, everywhere I go, every time I campaign, traffic is bad. There's traffic all over the city. We all live on roads that people cut through. The street I live on, people cut through to go to Holy Family School and things, and, you know, I don't like it, but that's the way it is sometimes.
Public road.
But I would say this, to me, and again, I understand this is private property. There is going to be something there. You know, I got a lot of emails about it should be a public space and the city should buy it and things like that. And, you know, maybe there's grants or something out there, but, you know, right now it's private property and the Rushes are going to do what they think is best with their private property. And I mean, I completely understand that. I guess the big thing with me, though, is this just seems like a massive building that's way too big for that spot. And, you know, it reminds me a little bit, and, you know, it's probably apples and oranges, but it reminds me somewhat of Cedar Brook, where it's just a big building, and I don't know if it fits there. So, again, the traffic doesn't bother me as much. You know, it seems like a lot of things, building, you guys have done a good job, but it's just a massive building that you're just dumping right in that little area, and it just, to me, doesn't seem to fit. So before I could support this, I would have to see some big changes. So that's just, you know, my early take on it. But that's where I am.
Any other comments?
I just have one question. And I can echo a lot of the sentiments that have been, said tonight, and I do live very near this project, but I like, some of the things about it, but I also have some serious concerns. One being, the overall size and scale of the building. When we, planned, we spent a lot of time on our master plan and thinking about future land uses, and this going against what we've, put together with the community and with the commission. Has there been any serious consideration given to digging down for the parking to reduce the scale of the footprint of the building, or the height of the building at least?
Due to the environmental challenges and then finances tied to that, that would not work. And at the end of the day, if we could somehow afford that, we'd still end up, with 106 units. So we did look at that, but at this point in time, we don't see that as a way forward.
Okay.
Christian. Just very quickly, to the last speaker, we all live in the community, and we all have the very same concerns that everyone in this room does. And I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can assure you that everything that comes up here is vetted and researched and discussed and contemplated. So there's no knee-jerk reactions on this panel, and we all take everything that everyone said incredibly seriously. And I live 4 blocks from the place, so it directly impacts me as well. So your voice is certainly heard. It's appreciated. And again, I'm serious. I wish we had this turnout for every planning commission meeting, because it's great to see everyone get involved and be involved and ask questions and come up and talk. So that's all I had to say, Dennis.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Real quick, Laurie Pinkham, 278 Reitman Court, just north, a few blocks north of
Woodward.
Woodward, thank you. What is in the ground? And possibly how deep would somebody have to go to clean this up? What would it take to clean this up? Are you covering something? If by building these buildings, are you covering something up, or are you getting something cleaned up? That's what I'd like to ask.
As I stated before, we haven't done enough of the work until we know the final footprint of the building, but we look at all the potential receptors, which again would be Paint Creek and the residents. It's not uncommon to cover something up, as bad as that sounds, but if certain levels are within acceptable exposure scenarios, you can legally leave it in place. And it's done all the time, and there's nothing, whether a development occurs or not, it's happening on every corner gas station and other manufacturing buildings all around the city, all around Michigan, all across the country.
But if it's not going to migrate and cause damage, the state probably would let you leave it in place.
Well, that's what you have to, you have to do all the studies to show that. The only work that's been done is to identify contamination, not to look at the characteristics of
No
if there's an
soil borings
aquifer.
or anything
No,
like
there were soil borings, but they didn't put in groundwater monitoring wells to monitor groundwater flow direction, permeability. There's not a substantial groundwater bearing unit in this, at this property, but those are all things we would look into further.
Looks like something more for you than me. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Okay, thank you again for attending. We're going to move on with our agenda now and finish this up.
Stay to the end. You don't have to leave, yeah.
Is it something we said?
I think it's something we said.
Next item is miscellaneous, and number 8 is public comment. Do we have any other public, Rose, waiting to talk to us?
I do not see anybody with their hand raised.
Thank you very much. Number 9 is upcoming agenda items. Patrick, is that yours?
Yeah, I can take that, Mr. Chairman. We have the elevator site. We have a new proposal that's been submitted for that, and I believe that's going through review right now with Vidya. The Downtown Inn, he's supposed to have a plan in this week, so we'll see what happens. I did get a call from him today. I unfortunately missed it, so I'll try to get hold of him tomorrow, see what's going on. The Blake team, I haven't seen anything new from them, and they haven't been in. They were going to come in and review their submission. They felt that they turned in something that we're just not seeing eye to eye on.
Okay.
The Preserves, had a couple meetings with them, and they are ready to provide a new plan submittal fairly soon. And then we have 429 South Main Street, which is the old Green's Art Supply. They were in for a facade renovation, and they're working through Vidya's previous comments. As of November 17, McKenna and Associates is supposed to be conducting another workshop for the zoning or the master plan implementation through zoning amendments. Kind of need to get a handle on whether we're going to have a quorum.
Yes, because I don't
Second
think I
meeting
have
this
to
month?
go to.
I will not be here. Yeah, I think November's probably not a good time. for the
Well, you
second
know
meeting.
what, you've got Thanksgiving is that Thursday, which would typically be that. Yeah,
Let's not do that. We'll wait till
December.
January. Let's
Yeah.
wait till January.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some of us have, that week, some of us have to focus on that Michigan-Ohio State game. I don't know if I can have two thoughts like.
Single track mind that we.
Just being honest.
Yeah.
So much space up there, I guess.
I'll tell you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I be reminded where the Preserves is? What project is that?
I think it's the, down below the bridge on the west side, the old
Churco.
truck repair,
The Churco project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
the old
Yeah,
cement
yeah.
plant and
Yeah.
et cetera, back in there, yeah.
I just couldn't remember.
It's not the one that
I
straddles
have that problem.
Rochester Hills, is it?
Randazzo's the other one, right?
Oh.
Right.
It's the cement.
So he did get his Eagle permit, which is very difficult. So now the ball's in Tony's court to say, nothing's stopping you. If you want to start, you would come in and get your building plans done. So he had talked about the overall cost in Brownfield, haven't heard back. So I suspect any day now we should hear from him and know what he's going to do. So at some point, he'll lose the site plan approval.
What do you have, 1 year from site plan approval?
From when? When would we?
Well, it's 1 year officially, but as long as you're in engineering review, which he's been, that delays it. So right now, we just need to know, is he in or out, and we'll find out. So
What's the,
Yeah.
what was the address on that property?
that's true, too.
Oh, right at the end of.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah.
What's the address on that one?
It's on First Street.
That's the corner one?
Yeah.
Well, it's at the intersection, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a two-story.
Corner from the South Street.
Yeah.
First Street
And
main lot.
Attorney Cross just reminded me, there was a development agreement that bought himself so much time because it was going to take Eagle permits and all this stuff. So he's got plenty of time. It's just, is he going to do it or not? Because to the resident's point, you factor those things in. If you know that's going to be built, and if the granary's going to come in, and this is going to come in, then you start wondering, Cody was way off on 4,000 units. That's 400 units, maybe maximum down the line, but you still want to know that. And
Yeah.
Mosherry, you heard Mosherry last time say, I'm rethinking the 55 and Boulder one, but I'm also all in on the elevator when they come in. So, like you said, we take one at a time. And then try to figure them out.
Well, there's a ton of development going on up north on Rochester Road. We don't control any of that. That's all coming in through
Yeah,
town.
right.
When I hear complaints about the traffic and I think about like our 100-unit project and you think about the massive subdivisions out there,
Yeah.
that's all coming through town.
Yeah, no, and we talk about that all the time. If we built nothing ever,
Oh,
it's gonna be what it is today and worse. I mean,
Can't make
go,
White
go,
Street
go down 25 Mile East, and there's probably 500 homes under construction right now in Shelby and Macomb Township. And they all, when they want to come downtown, where's the closest downtown?
here.
Right here. So we can't control that. We can control what we can do, so.
Mr. Chairman, can I give you just one other piece of information?
please do.
There was some discussion about people renting condos and things. Just so this board knows that we have a little over 300 residents in Rochester that are rental properties.
Yeah.
So that's people that have bought houses and now are renting them to someone else. We're over 300 right now, just for your information.
Is a lot of this the Airbnb stuff?
No,
or-
that's not legal.
No, not even talking
Long-term
Airbnb.
rentals.
We're just talking about residential properties. Those are the ones we know, and we
Yeah.
think we're probably missing 10 to 15% of people that are renting their homes and not registering them properly. So just some information.
You're
Thank you
supposed to
very
do
much.
like a fire inspection.
Yeah.
You're supposed to
Sometimes
rental,
they've done
you're supposed to, you can't homestead it, and you're supposed to register with the fire department, and every time you change a tenant, you have to reoccupy,
But they
reapply
don't
for
do
it.
that. There's a lot of
So-
condos that are rented out.
Yeah, there's a lot of condos. That's barely even, he's talking about the west side homes. Over on my side, there's 5 or 6 per block now that are rented out. It's crazy.
I was one of them. Taylor,
So they don't like that. but-
That's how he got here?
Anything else? This meeting is adjourned.
Did we set a record?
I think that might have been it.
That was pretty
Yeah.
long.